Our main character's name is Michael, who was an ordinary college student until the world was overrun by zombies 20 years ago. All the last years of his life, all he did was try to survive in a new environment full of dangers. Over the years, his mind began to crumble from the realization that he would not be able to meet his family, whom he abandoned in order to survive in this harsh world. Being on the verge of death, he was not afraid of it because he understood that his entire existence was meaningless. In the heat of battle, he finally found peace, but by some unusual miracle he found himself in his children's room, assuming that his life was flashing before his eyes. Looking around, he cannot believe that he found himself in the very place that was destroyed exactly 20 years ago, when everything began to change rapidly. Looking at the photograph next to his bed, in which he is carrying his younger sister in his arms, it seems to him that everything that is happening is just a figment of his imagination. Everything around seems quite real because our main character feels the smells and touches of his body, which in the reflection reminds him of a young and stupid child. At that very second, he remembers that it was on this day that the apocalypse began and decides to check where his younger sister is now. He remembers how on that fateful day his cowardice and fear at the sight of danger took over and controlled his body. Seeing the first infected person, he abandoned his sister, sitting in a wheelchair, leaving her to die, and then regretted it all his life. After the memories come flooding back to him, he looks at the calendar and the exact time, realizing that his assumption about the events of 20 years ago turns out to be true. Michael realizes that, apparently, somehow magically he really returned 20 years into the past. Opening the door of the room, he sees his younger sister sitting in a wheelchair, watching the wonderful flow of life outside the window. Unable to contain his emotions, the main character rushes into the arms of his sister Sylvia with tears, and she does not understand what is happening. The confused girl, thinking that her brother had a bad dream, tries to calm him down, but he, without explaining anything, says that he will not make the mistakes that he managed to survive. He wipes the remaining tears from his tear-stained face with his hands and asks his sister to stay at home while he goes away for a while on business. Sylvia asks him not to rush and removes one of the hairpins from her head and gives it to the main character, saying that when he returns alive he will give it back. Having promised his sister to return soon, the main character changes clothes, realizing that there is very little time left before the start of the apocalypse, and he needs to prepare properly. The main problem after the start of the apocalypse was resources, and a small convenience store was at the price of a human life, so Michael goes shopping. The girls working in the store are discouraged by the number of goods that our main character buys and decide that he is not himself. Having collected almost most of all the goods from the store shelves, the main character asks if there is still some food lying around in their warehouse. When the girls ask how he plans to deliver all these goods home, the main character points to a real van near the store. After some time, having paid for all purchases and loaded the contents into the car, even the driver is surprised why our main character needs so many supplies. While they are not leaving, the man looks at a photograph of his family and tells our main character that he needs to devote more time to his loved ones because sooner or later it will end. Having finished unloading supplies, the man is about to say goodbye to Michael, but he stops him because he wants to give him something. The main character asks the driver to finish work for today and go to his family, since in the near future the world will change a lot, and he needs to protect them. After some time, Michael begins to make weapons for self-defense from scrap materials. His preparation is interrupted by Sylvia, whose appearance clearly shows that she does not understand what is happening and expresses her dissatisfaction. She starts yelling at her brother because she has received a notice that all the accumulated money has been withdrawn from their joint account, and she demands an immediate explanation. Her brother smiles and asks her not to be so angry and, with the hope of understanding, says that the apocalypse is coming and asks her to believe him. The surprised girl puts her forehead to her brother's head, thinking that he has a fever because what he says seems like a child's prank. Michael sincerely asks to believe in his words and asks his sister to enjoy the clean air and peaceful sky above her head for the last time. Sylvia says that her brother is acting very strange today and doing rash and very strange things. But the girl notices that for the first time in her life she sees Michael so serious, and this makes her not deny what she heard. I understand the seriousness of the situation. The main character remembers that in the first week after the start of all events, 90% of the world's population will die or turn into zombies. Somewhere in the city after nightfall, an unknown man receives a message from his superiors that makes him angry, and he hears a dog barking nearby. Dissatisfied with the fact that he will have to work all weekend, he throws his phone with all his might towards the dog, splashing out his anger, after which he sees how it turns out to be an unusual dog, but a mutated animal that rushes at its offender. Watching the beginning of chaos on the streets of the city, our heroes come into real primitive horror. Sylvia, shocked by what she saw, asks her brother what is happening when suddenly someone starts knocking on the door of their apartment. The girl hears in her voice that it is their neighbor who is calling for help, and the main character remembers that in the past it was because of her that they encountered the first zombie. Sylvia hurries to open the door as their neighbor's cries for help become more and more intrusive. Having opened the doorway, she sees in front of her the frightened face of a woman who lives nearby and asks what happened to her. Any emotion disappears from Sylvia's face as she sees an angry mutant behind the woman's back. Memories from a past life slip through our protagonist's head, in which he, along with other survivors, went on a very important mission. Their group found themselves surrounded on all sides by high-level monsters and panic reigned among them. The main character tried his best to buy some time for his comrades to retreat, while fighting enemies superior to them in strength. Looking around, he noticed his close friend, who asked for forgiveness and simply left him to die, and he ran away. Michael remembered that he himself had once done the same thing, leaving his defenseless sister all alone. At that moment, he realized how desperate and helpless Sylvia felt and managed to react and threw the weapon he had made towards the infected. Michael asked his sister to close her eyes, promising that he would protect her at all costs, and everything would be fine with them. He asks Sylvia to stay put, and sees how the zombie with a stick sticking out of its skull rushes into the attack again in the hope of tearing apart the pathetic people. The main character, with ease and equanimity on his face, parries the attacker's attack and cuts off one of his limbs. He understands that in front of him is now the first, lowest level of zombies that appeared at the very beginning of the apocalypse, and they do not have intelligence. Without any problems, with a few lightning-fast movements, he deals with the infected using his many years of experience. After defeating the enemy, Sylvia tugs on the hem of his jacket, asking her brother to stop fighting. Michael hugs his sister, saying that it's all over and everything will definitely be fine with her, after which he begins to look around because he hears someone's voice. His sister, not understanding what is happening to her brother, tries to help him, but the main character begins to lose consciousness. After some time, he comes to his senses and sees a strange sanctuary around him, shrouded in a blue glow and draining incredible energy. A few moments later, the statues located in the circle of the sanctuary shoot powerful beams of energy from their eyes at our hero. Our main character's head begins to split from the enormous amount of information entering his brain, and he sees information windows pop up in front of his eyes. His body begins to change rapidly, and the voice of the system in his head says that a restructuring and study of genes is taking place. Having completed the transformation of the main character, he informs that the recognition of the owner of the system is completed and he finds himself in a changed body. Michael feels his body filled with vital energy, and contextual windows in his head tell him that he can improve himself and his skills. He understands that in order to develop he needs to pay evolution points, which he will need to earn by killing various infected people. He can spend evolution points on various characteristics of his body such as strength, detection speed, intelligence, and so on. Having received his first points, he decides to upgrade his strength indicators to increase his chances of survival. Better than his skills, he suddenly feels a surge of strength in his body and hopes that this time he will be able to change his future thanks to this strength. After distributing the points, he again loses consciousness and comes to his senses already in our world, watching how his sister waited all this time for him to wake up. Having regained consciousness, the protagonist's sister immediately says that her brother scared her very much because he fainted too quickly, and she did not know what to do. Sylvia starts crying and says that she couldn't bear it if something happened to her brother, and he pats her on the head and explains that everything will be fine. Having regained consciousness, Michael immediately understands that he needs to deal with the corpse of their neighbor. Otherwise even more zombies will come here. But upon leaving the door he discovers that she is missing. Instead of a lifeless body, he sees only a pool of blood and a trail that stretches along the stairs to the lower floors. Realizing that he will have to clear the entire perimeter in order to remain safe, the main character decides to change his clothes since they have become too small for him. Thanks to evolution, he grew a lot and gained muscle mass, and his body became much stronger and more resilient. Sylvia, who has moved into the room, gives her brother their father's things, which should be just the right size for him. While waiting for the t-shirt to be put on, the girl begins to and changed in appearance. Michael tries to make an excuse and blames everything on a hormonal imbalance in his body, and also reports that he will need to leave for a while. Sylvia is very worried about her brother, and says that she is scared because the world has changed so much, and she is afraid of becoming a burden for him. The main character tries to calm his sister down, explaining that he just wants to look around and make sure their shelter is safe. He asks his sister not to think that she is a burden for him because he does not want to be in the place of their neighbor, and in such a difficult time they definitely need to hold on to each other. Sylvia agrees with him and asks him to return as soon as possible, finally giving him her hairpin, which, according to tradition, he must return. Armed with a dagger, our main hero leaves the walls of his apartment and goes on reconnaissance. He examines the bloody trail left on the floor after the zombie he killed, and realizing that they live on the top floor, all the danger will be below. Michael begins to slowly walk down the stairs, carefully examining each floor and checking all sorts of rooms until he comes across new infected people. As soon as the zombie notices our main character, he immediately begins to move in his direction, uttering incomprehensible phrases. Having rushed to attack our protagonist, the infected suffers inevitable defeat, since Michael has plenty of skills and experience in fighting high-level enemies. The context menu informs the main character that for each entry-level zombie he receives 1 evolution point. Also looking at the improvement window, he sees that to improve different skills, different numbers of evolution points are required, and to increase the same power he needs 6 points. The most expensive thing is to pump up the mental spirit, because in a past life he heard about people who had various skills of the mental spirit, and decides that this is perhaps the most important characteristic. Looking at his skills, he understands that to obtain the ability he needs the 10th level of mental spirit, and at the moment it is better to pump up other skills and leave it for later. As I descend to lower and lower floors, our protagonist's main priority goal is to kill as many infected as possible. Inspecting the next apartment, he sees traces of blood on the walls and furniture, which indicates a recent battle. Going into the bath, he sees the lifeless body of a woman who, apparently, did not have time to turn into a zombie. Michael understands perfectly well that not everyone is able to withstand such drastic changes in life, and it is easier to interrupt their own life. At that very second, his detection skills allow him to react to an infected person behind him. Having opened its huge mouth, the zombie is already about to sink its teeth into our protagonist and bite off a huge piece of flesh from him. The main character manages to react and, using his dagger, pierces the mutant attacking him right through the skull. In no case should he let his guard down, because the tree of evolution did not make him immortal. After clearing the next floor, he decides not to hesitate and continue to inspect the building because he doesn't have much time left. While examining the next floor, he is noticed by a certain woman who managed to survive and apparently is also one of the residents of this house. After knocking on the door and asking if there are survivors here, the woman looks out of the doorway and says that her apartment is safe and asks to be left alone. The main character asks to be allowed to personally verify the safety of her shelter because he does not want to use force. The woman nevertheless decides to let the main character into her apartment for a while, where everything looks quite peaceful and calm. While looking around the room, Michael notices a photograph hanging on the wall and decides to ask where her husband and child are now. The woman replies that her son is at school, and her husband went to meet him and they still have not returned, and she is very worried about them. After which she asks him to leave her apartment because she is very scared, and as soon as our main character is about to leave, he hears strange sounds coming from the bedroom. He immediately decides to check what exactly is causing the noise, and a woman with a scared look on her face tries to stop him, saying that there is no one else here. Michael begins to open the doorway on the back side of which blood can be seen, and the woman tries her best to stop him. Entering the room, he sees a small silhouette of a man holding a bloody corpse in his hand. This frightening image, apparently, is the son of the same woman who turned into a zombie. With a crazy smile, he asks to play with him. At this same second, the main character manages to react to the fact that the woman standing behind him is trying to attack him. Having dodged the attack, he does not understand what is happening, asks why she behaves this way and why she decided to hide the presence of the infected. Without waiting for an answer, the boy immediately attacks him, making Michael surprised at how fast zombie children are. Using his new body, the main character falls on his back and with a powerful movement of his legs throws away the body of the attacker. The woman he met immediately stands between the two of them, saying that she will not allow her son to be touched or harmed. Michael asks her to come to her senses because this is no longer her son, but zombies who eat people, and if she continues to protect him, she will be in serious danger. The woman begins to have a hysterical panic and says that she doesn't believe it, because this is her beloved boy and he's just a little sick and she needs to wait until they invent a cure. She tries to dissuade our protagonist from killing her son while the infected rushes to attack. The main character is trying his best to convince the woman, and also to warn her that she needs to evade. But all his attempts are in vain, and moments later her body is pierced by a powerful blow and blood splashes scatter everywhere. The child begins to eat his mother's body, and Michael immediately rushes to her aid in the hope of saving the poor woman. Lying on the floor bleeding, at the last moment she manages to grab the main character by the leg, and even being on the verge of death, asks not to kill her son. The protagonist, with despair in his eyes, explains that if a person turns, he cannot be saved and he cannot allow him to walk the streets of the city threatening other survivors. Living the last moment of her life, a woman loosens her grip and continues to assert the opposite until the very end. The main character deals with her son with one swing of his dagger, and blood splashes scatter throughout the room. He calmly leaves, leaving the corpses of the entire family lying on the floor and regretting that this happened. I go down to the next floors behind my back. He leaves a taut wire with bells hanging on it, which act as an alarm. Once on the next floor, he sees in front of him a huge muscular man, who in ordinary life was a fitness trainer. The colossal-sized infected immediately rushes to attack our protagonist, holding a huge iron dumbbell in both hands. Michael manages to avoid the blow, but the strength with which this zombie attacks is truly impressive because the stronger a person was before infection, the greater the danger he poses in zombie form. Not allowing the main character to breathe, the zombie immediately throws an iron dumbbell in his direction, which Michael also manages to dodge and jump to the door behind him. After landing, a powerful explosion is heard as another very powerful mutant appears from the apartment behind him. His appearance clearly takes our protagonist by surprise, and he manages to receive several wounds. In addition to the powerful zombie trainer, who has incredible strength, he faces a zombified animal that looks like a huge dog. It immediately rushes to attack the main character, but Michael at the last moment manages to parry the attack, finding himself on the brink of death. The zombie dog still manages to touch our protagonist, and a few drops of blood begin to fall down the floors. They fly past the stairs, attracting the attention of all the mutated people nearby inside the building. Michael understands that the situation he is in is very difficult, and in addition to two strong infected, he has attracted the attention of a large number of small individuals. The seriousness of the situation is reinforced by the fact that he had already received quite a large number of wounds. The huge zombie trainer does not allow him to catch his breath and continues to attack with incredible force, destroying everything around him. The main character still manages to counterattack the attacker, delivering a powerful longitudinal blow to the entire body of the zombie. The wounds received are not even enough to unbalance the zombie, and he continues to attack with even greater fury. The situation is also aggravated by the zombie, a beast that complements attacks with its speed and teeth as sharp as a knife blade. Michael decides to regroup and retreat for a while to come up with a better plan to fight them. Running down the stairs, he stumbles upon low-level zombies who were attracted by his blood and stood in his way. He finds himself squeezed in a vice where on one side his path is blocked by a crowd of infected, and from behind he is attacked by two powerful opponents. The protagonist decides to go ahead because he has no other options to get out of this situation. He begins to deal with low-level zombies at a very fast speed, trying to clear a path for himself to retreat. A huge zombie trainer throws a huge metal dumbbell towards our main character, which knocks down everything in its path. After which he looks around in the hope of finding Michael's lifeless body, but finds only the corpses of his colleagues, not understanding where he disappeared. Meanwhile, the main character manages to hide in the chaos in the nearest apartment, which apparently belonged to some gamer. Trying to catch his breath, the main character tries to understand why the infected are developing so quickly because their strength has already gone beyond the first stage of the apocalypse. While he was thinking about the fact that the evolution of the infected was proceeding at incredible speed, his opponents were already combing the apartment in which he was hiding with might and main. A huge zombie fitness trainer finds our protagonist, who has been hiding behind the back of the sofa all this time. Without wasting time to think, he immediately attacks the main character, who, in turn, tries to protect himself from the blow by taking all the energy upon himself. The energy from the impact turns out to be so powerful that Michael's body breaks through several concrete walls, ending up in the next room. For some time he loses consciousness and, drowning in emptiness, realizes that even after rebirth he still remains a worthless and weak person, unable to change anything. Lying in a pile of concrete rubble, the sound of the tearing bells that he left on the upper floors brings him to consciousness. He immediately remembers his younger sister, whom he promised to protect at all costs, and this thought gives him strength. Michael decides to immediately spend the points he has on pumping up his speed and strength, which allows him to get back on his feet. He hurries up to his apartment as soon as possible, destroying all low-level infected with one blow thanks to the improvements he has received. At this time, Sylvia hears strange sounds outside the door and hopes that it is her brother and decides to open the door. Meanwhile, 2 infected people are standing outside, on whose bodies the light from our hero's apartment begins to shine, but Michael is already rushing to the rescue. In a moment, having dealt with the zombie, he comes to the door and asks his sister if everything is okay with her, asking her not to worry because he is fine. Meanwhile, a couple of powerful infected have already managed to reach their shelter, and he asks Sylvia to close the door and not open it to anyone at all costs. Michael points a dagger towards the zombies, saying that he will not allow them to take a step in his direction. The zombie fitness trainer begins to scream furiously, uttering the same phrase asking for a membership card to their gym. Having taken one extra step, the hero immediately rushes into the attack, cutting off his leg, saying that he warned about the consequences. After which he immediately jumps up, soaring into the air and throwing his dagger with all his might into the body of the zombie beast. At the same time, during the landing, he delivers a powerful kick to the zombie trainer, hitting his head on the concrete floor. The main character hurries to return his weapon by pulling it out of the dog's body, and at this time the zombie trainer again tries to attack him, although he moves much more slowly. Increasing characteristics by pumping up skills allows Michael to cut the mutant's body into small pieces by making several powerful attacks. Our protagonist emerges victorious from this battle, and since these zombies turned out to be of a higher level, he receives more points for them. He also notes that there is very little time left before the crazy evolution of zombies, and if everything continues to move at such a speed, he needs to adapt as soon as possible. After some time, Michael finishes checking all floors of his house, completely clearing it of infected people. After such an exhausting night, he returns to his home and decides to take a shower while distributing the accumulated skill points. The main character decides to develop his skills evenly, investing little by little in each available skill line. In the evening of the same day, having rested a little, he decides to check how his sister is feeling and talk a little with her about what happened. Sylvia says that she watched the news that said that zombies have appeared all over the world, but the authorities assure that they can completely cope. Michael promises that they will definitely be able to cope completely, because even in case of failure, he will always be there and will definitely protect his sister. Sylvia says that today she was very scared because she was worried that her brother would not come back. If she could walk, she would have made every effort to make their survival easier. The main character tries to cheer up his sister by saying that she will definitely be able to get back on her feet, and she, in turn, asks not to feel sorry for her because it is impossible. Reflecting on everything that happened, Michael hopes that there is a chance to cure his sister because today the meteor shower will begin, which became a turning point after the start of the apocalypse. After some time, a huge number of meteorites begin to fall from the sky, and Michael remembers that in his past life this caused the first evolution of zombies. Inside these meteorites there are special cores that can strengthen both zombies and ordinary people. If he can get them in sufficient quantities, he will change the world. Together with his sister, they watch from the roof of the house as a meteor shower begins to destroy everything around, turning our civilization into stone ruins. At one point, one of the meteorites falls right near the house of our main characters, which could well have ended their lives. Looking at the map, Michael realizes that he fell a short distance from their house, and with his speed he can get there within an hour. The main character decides to make some preparations, and the next morning go to the site of the meteorite fall to get the core and try to cure his sister. A smile appears on his face because he begins to believe that a small ray of hope has appeared in their lives for at least a fleeting bright future. The day after meteorites riddled all the fruits of the civilization of our world, there is a huge dusty haze over the city. At this time, Sylvia realizes that her brother wants to go outside the house and tries to dissuade him, saying that it is unsafe. Michael explains that he is going outside on a very important matter and is doing it for her and all humanity. His sister, with a displeased expression on her face, asks him not to talk about it because she would prefer that her brother be safe and sound in exchange for the ability to walk. The main character asks for forgiveness and says that there is complete confusion, finally leaving his sister a walkie-talkie, thanks to which they can keep in touch. Going down the elevator to the first floor, the protagonist is slightly upset, realizing that he could have offended his beloved sister. His thoughts are interrupted by Sylvia, who decides to check if the walkie-talkie is working and asks for forgiveness for her behavior, saying that she understands that all this is being done for her sake. Once on the first floor, Michael asks for forgiveness and says that he needs to go and asks his sister not to go anywhere until he arrives. Finally, the girl tells him to check his pockets, in which she left him her hairpin, which he must return to her upon his return. Michael leaves the walls of his house, promising to return before dark, and begins to move towards the fallen meteorite, avoiding unnecessary collisions with the infected. At this time in the city, a group of military personnel is clearing out infected people, trying to keep the situation under control. One of the soldiers reports to the commander that all the mutated ones in the western part of the city have been eliminated, and their number has noticeably decreased after the meteor shower. Meanwhile, a tall and stately woman named Megan receives a report from a soldier, and is their commander. Her assistant named Lena says that it is necessary to issue new instructions to the soldiers and continue clearing the city. Megan orders them to continue patrolling the area and make sure they don't miss any infected people. At the same time, their conversation is interrupted by a man sitting at the table, who jumps up and asks the woman to immediately accompany them to the company. Megan grabs him by the shirt, explaining that she is a police officer, not his personal bodyguard, and if his life is dear to him, he must listen to everything she orders. Looking at him with a frightening gaze, the girl asks him to express all the complaints that do not suit him in the current circumstances. Frightened by the pressure from Megan, the man finds nothing better than to agree and stop being nervous. Leaving the men in jackets alone, the commander asks Lena to contact Mr. Leonardo, who needs to convey some information. At the same time, the second man sitting at the table looks at Megan angrily, promising that one day he will get this ferocious cat. Having contacted Mr. Leonardo, Megan reports that all the zombies in the area have disappeared somewhere, and most likely this is due to yesterday's meteor shower, and for now they will continue patrolling. Meanwhile, Michael moves towards the crater left by the meteorite, trying to minimize collisions with the infected so as not to attract unnecessary attention. After some time, he finds himself at the very crater from the crater of which a huge amount of dark energy emanates. The main character decides not to rush to hasty conclusions and explore the surroundings by climbing onto the nearest high-rise building. He sees how in the center of the crater there is a fragment of a meteorite, emitting a huge amount of energy, and in a past life he had never seen it alive. Also, near one of the walls of the crater, he notices a zombie who is trying to get out, and who is not at all interested in absorbing the fragment. Michael understands that time is beginning to move towards sunset. If he delays, the zombie may absorb the energy, and this will become a very big problem for him. The main character makes a decision, using his speed, not to enter into confrontation and simply pick up the fragment and run away. Once at the very crater, he makes a lightning dash towards the zombie in the hope of catching it by surprise and quickly finishing it off. When striking an infected person's body, his homemade weapon breaks as if it were made of glass, and the zombie's skin turns out to be as strong as steel. The zombie girl turns to our main character and greets him, and her appearance clearly says that she is clearly not a weak individual. Michael manages to notice her black eyeballs and golden pupils, as well as tattoos all over her body, and concludes that in front of him is a native zombie. For a few seconds he is seized by primal horror, since in his past life they most instilled terror in humanity, and were superior in strength to anyone else. In an instant, the infected gets closer to our protagonist, grabbing him by the remains of a homemade spear and throwing him into the air with incredible ease. Trying to land on the ground, our main character begins to get in the way of vines shooting from the ground like bullets. Having managed to get his dagger, he manages to chop up the annoying plants and remain unharmed. Michael understands that the original zombies have special abilities, and their strength and speed are at a very high level, making them not the easiest opponents. While he is trying to understand why such strong zombies began to appear so early, the girl does not give him the opportunity to think and attacks him again. The protagonist decides not to engage in battle and simply try to pick up the fragment and run away, avoiding unnecessary damage. Numerous vines suddenly stand in his way again, not giving him the opportunity to just do it. The native zombie smiles as if mocking our main character and is just having fun. The speed of her skills does not give our protagonist even the slightest second to think and make decisions, and he has to defend himself all the time. Their powers at this moment in time are at completely different levels, and even trying to defend himself, Michael still receives a lot of damage. Realizing the sadness of his situation, he understands that events are developing much faster than in his previous life and, apparently, history is changing. At the same time, Michael notices how a fragment of a meteorite and a zombie are connected by an invisible energy thread. He suggests that the native zombie, like all the others, arose from these fragments and act as its protectors. The main character assumes that in this case the infected woman will not be able to move far from the fragment, and decides to break the distance with her by going beyond the crater. The zombie girl tries to stop the protagonist with a vine branch, but he manages to defend himself and chop them into pieces. Finding himself beyond her reach, Michael manages to take a breath for a while and decide what to do next. He decides to take refuge in a nearby building and use it as a temporary shelter to regroup and come up with a new plan. He takes out a red glass flask from his backpack and decides on an ambitious plan, saying that he will need the blood of a dead man. After some time, he, riding a motorcycle, leads a huge horde of infected people, which he managed to lure from all over the area. Finding himself near the crater where the original specimen is located, he throws a test tube of blood into the air, putting his plan into action. The main character manages to break the test tube, and the entire contents fall in a bloody rain. His plan was to use the dead man's blood as bait for a large number of low-level zombies that the original zombie would have to fight. Such impudence and insidious plan infuriates the female, and she begins to attack everything that tries to harm her with even greater speed and fury. Michael begins to observe everything that is happening from afar and hopes that his plan will have at least some effect. Even with an incredible superiority in strength, the original zombie cannot so quickly deal with the horde of infected attacking it, and they simply crush it with numbers. The presence of intelligence in the original zombie allows her to get out of such a difficult situation and use her vine to soar into the air. Being out of reach of ordinary low-level zombies, she begins to attack them from safety. Michael at this moment decides to come closer to the crater and try to steal the fragment, while the original is busy fighting. The only thing that worries our main character in this situation is a large accumulation of mutants, because of which he himself may fall into a trap. The protagonist also understands that he cannot delay this battle, otherwise the fragment will have time to restore the energy of the female, and will become even more difficult. Unexpectedly for everyone present, a very powerful and ominous roar is heard, which can only mean one thing. Looking around, Michael and the original zombie notice a huge and ferocious mutated beast. He immediately rushes to attack the female because he perfectly senses her strength, and understands that she must be dealt with first. The beast manages to knock her to the ground, pressing her with his paw, intending to tear her into small pieces. The main character realizes the deplorability of the situation, but understands that the animal has every chance of emerging victorious from this fight. But looking at its fur, he understands that it will soon mutate. This will happen if the mutated beast manages to absorb a meteorite fragment, and in this case, trying to emerge victorious from this battle will be pointless. The original zombie, being in a not the most advantageous position, still manages to attack the beast with the help of its strength, throwing it to the side. The mutant clearly does not like this and, with even greater animal rage inherent in him, rushes to attack the zombies. Without having time to react and keep up with the reaction speed of the infected beast, he still manages to sink his knife-sharp teeth into the body of the female individual. Michael understands that the situation is taking a very unexpected turn and is already preparing to stop the beast from finishing what he started. Because if the original loses, the situation will become even more deplorable. At the last moment, the main character still decides to stop, not believing that such a powerful opponent with intelligence lost so easily. At the same second, a fountain of blood begins to gush from the mouth of the mutated beast, and the roots of the vine pierce its body. His body soars high into the sky, hanging on the spear-sharp branches of the vine, signifying his defeat in this battle. The main character understands that all this was just a plan of the original zombie to lure him closer to himself in order to deal with two opponents with one blow. The female begins to smile and praise our main character, saying that the pathetic little man was not so simple as to believe in such a trick. Michael also says that she is not the easiest opponent, and he will have to work hard to emerge victorious, after which he goes downstairs into the arena, causing surprise to the original, who did not think that he would personally come to her to die and lose. The female decides not to hesitate, and immediately tries to attack him with her roots, but Michael manages to defend himself once again. He continues to fend off numerous attacks with the help of the vine and notices that the battle with the infected beast and a huge number of low-level zombies has greatly exhausted the original one. At the limit of her capabilities, she tries to move into close combat and personally attack Michael. This act turns out to be very reckless, since the main character manages to cut off her attacker's hand without any problems with one deft movement. After this, the original zombie is overcome by animal rage and misunderstanding of how a pathetic human being is capable of such a thing and promises to finish him off here and now. The main character turns out to be quite surprised that the female still has the strength to fight, and all this time she has not shown her maximum. Looking around, he notices that the original is beginning to absorb the energy of the fragment, and, with its help, restore her wounds. After a few moments, she takes on a new form, becoming similar to a rose flower and becoming much stronger. Her speed and strength increase 100-fold, and she begins to try to finish off our protagonist. Michael understands that with the current level of strength he will in no way be able to defeat such a powerful individual and again tries to escape, but his escape route is blocked by vine branches. The firstborn says that such a trick won't work with her twice, and here and now they will decide which of them will be stronger. The main character is slowly starting to run out of strength to dodge and defend himself, and one of the blows almost reaches its target. But at the last moment, the branches of the vine stop attacking Michael, and the body of the original zombie begins to emit fountains of blood. The protagonist understands that the female could not withstand such a strong energy from the fragment, and moreover, her body is very exhausted after so many battles. She tries with all her strength to attack Michael, saying that some pathetic little man cannot defeat her. Without any problems, repelling the next attacks of the original zombie, Michael says that by continuing to fight she will finish herself off. Using his speed, he closes the distance with her, realizing that the outcome of the battle is already predetermined. The exhausted female falls to the ground and prepares to accept her fate, realizing the deplorability of her situation. The main character threatens her with his dagger, and it is said that he knew the outcome of this battle from the very beginning. Looking at the dying original zombie, he remembers that in the past he could not imagine that he would ever be able to defeat such a strong opponent. In the past, due to the strength of the enemy, he made the wrong choice and regretted it for a very long time, so he decides to swear to stand on his feet until his last breath, protecting what is dear to him. The context window informs our main character that for killing a native zombie he receives 100 evolution points. Michael could not imagine that he would receive so many points for defeating her and decides that in future he needs to be more careful with other fragments. After his triumphant victory, he decides to take the meteorite and is surprised that he can safely touch it with his hands. Touching the fragment with his hand, he feels how its energy begins to fill his body, restoring his strength. Michael is in complete shock, realizing that all his wounds have almost completely disappeared and hopes that his sister will also be able to recover and start walking. Just before leaving, he looks back at the body of the infected beast because he hears strange sounds and assumes that the monster is still alive. A huge amount of energy begins to leave his body, plunging the main character into horror that he faces another battle. His face shows incredible surprise at what he saw, and he cannot believe his eyes. From the body of a huge mutated beast came a small puppy with yellow fur. He takes him in his arms and suggests that after the death of his mother, the cub in her womb absorbed all her powers and because of this was able to survive. Michael suggests that he can tame the newborn monster if he becomes the first one he sees when he opens his eyes. The puppy begins to bark joyfully and lick the cheeks of our main character, thinking that he is part of his family. The protagonist decides to name his new pet Goldie and, having hidden it in his backpack along with a meteorite fragment, decides to return to his shelter as soon as possible. Moving through the streets of the city, a strange energy envelopes everything in the area, attracting crowds of the infected. This energy comes from meteorite fragments, which our main character carries in his backpack and acts as bait for the infected. Before he can reach his shelter, the ground under his feet begins to crack and crumble into small pieces. Michael manages to dodge and realizes that all this time someone has been chasing him, and he won't let him get away just like that. A huge number of mutated giant rats begin to appear from the ground, which have been following the energy of the meteorite all this time. The main character manages to defend himself from the attack of rodents, realizing that his position is not the most advantageous, and now he cannot just fight them. At this time, Assistant Lena asks her commander to take a break and at least get some sleep because she has been on her feet for a very long time. Megan says that she doesn't have time for this and continues to observe the situation and notices how our main character runs in the distance and reports that he sees a survivor. The girl is quite surprised at the speed with which our main character moves, and also notices that he is being pursued by a huge flock of giant rats. Although Megan is not able to understand how this man managed to avoid so many attacks from infected animals, she still decides to help him. Meanwhile, the main character moves towards their shelter, assuming that this building will be suitable for a temporary shelter where he can catch his breath. Once on the territory of the building, iron bars and concrete walls manage to delay the mutants pursuing him for some time. Michael, having managed to get to the garage, sits down on the floor and tries to come up with a further plan for his actions, assuming that today he will not be able to get home and will have to spend the night somewhere else. Opening his backpack to check if Goldie and the meteorite fragment are okay, he discovers that the crystal has simply disappeared. The first thing our protagonist managed to think was that the fragment was missing or that his animal managed to absorb it. All these assumptions are immediately dispelled when the context menu of the evolution tree tells him that the absorption of the crystal has been completed and the process of restructuring has begun. At this same second, the main character's body is enveloped in an incomprehensible aura and he begins to experience a very wild pain tearing him to pieces. A moment later, his body begins to emit massive amounts and waves of energy, knocking back everything that was near him. At the same moment, the rats chasing our main character manage to get through the concrete barrier and get into the parking lot. Michael realizes the deplorability of the current situation, but cannot find the strength to gather his courage and at least try to stand up, and the tree of evolution is to blame for this. His eyes begin to close, and he slowly loses consciousness, not believing that he will be dead here and now. At the last moment, Goldie manages to save her owner by repelling the attack of the rats and coming to his defense. The little puppy's body becomes coated with a thin layer of electricity and begins to emit large amounts of energy. He stands between the attacking rats and the body of his master, ready to give his life for his protection. Goldie begins to fight hordes of rats, attacking them with bolts of electricity and using her speed and size as an advantage. The number of infected turns out to be too large, and through a gap in the walls, even low-level individuals manage to get inside and surround our main character. The faithful puppy does not have time to keep up with so many opponents, and he has to continue the battle with the rats located outside the building. Before making an attack and finishing off our main character, one of the rats suffers inevitable death from being hit by a bullet from a weapon. At that same second, other surviving people, armed and arriving to help our main character, appear in the parking lot. The gray-haired man asks Megan if they should have brought strangers to the shelter because if he was bitten they would have a very hard time. The commander replies that they cannot abandon the survivor, they need to isolate him and observe him. The survivors manage to take refuge inside the building, while Goldie remains on the street to protect the shelter from the infected attacking it. At this time, being unconscious, Michael wakes up in the sanctuary of the Tree of Evolution, which has noticeably changed. His body begins to become covered with clots of yellow energy, merging into one with the set of genes that he had. This process takes a very long time, but at some point our main character regains consciousness. During the time that Michael was passed out, his faithful companions spent all this time fighting hordes of zombies. Having opened his eyes, our main character realizes that his head is splitting, and he is trying to remember all the events that happened to him before he lost consciousness. Megan, who is in the same room with him, immediately points a gun at him and orders him not to move and to answer her questions first. Michael replies that he doesn't have time for that and needs to urgently go about things that are a higher priority. The girl is about to tell the main character that he won't just leave, when he suddenly appears behind her back. The main character manages to disarm Megan and throw her to the ground, answering that she does not have enough strength to just stop him. At that same second, all the survivors enter the room and ask Michael not to move or make sudden movements, otherwise they will open fire. Megan orders her men not to move and explains that she is the commander of the military police, and they were the ones who saved him from certain death. One of the two men in suits says that the main character is an ungrateful, impudent man, and they shouldn't have babysat him for 4 whole days. Hearing this, Michael completely forgets about everything that happened, realizing that he had been passed out for 4 whole days. He immediately rushes towards the exit, realizing that all this time his sister is alone and in possible danger. Megan manages to stop him, saying that the street is full of zombies and it's too dangerous there, and invites him to stay in their squad. While Michael asks what will happen if he refuses this offer, a huge terrifying silhouette can be seen outside the window of the room in which they are located. In an instant, the monster bursts into the room, destroying everything in its path and emitting a frantic scream. All survivors immediately rush in different directions trying to protect themselves and everyone around them. Stunned Lena, while still a schoolgirl, experiences incredible fear and simply cannot move while standing in one place. The main character manages to save the defenseless girl by stopping the monster's huge paw with his body and blocking his path. In the moment he realizes that he himself did not understand how he managed to do this, and most likely his dexterity has increased significantly. Just like his physical skills, not one person on the planet is capable of holding back such an incredible force of a mutant thrusting at him with his bare hands. All the survivors, looking at what is happening, cannot believe their eyes and doubt that the stranger they met is an ordinary person. Using the newly acquired powers, the main character manages to throw the monster's body back. Realizing that his physical indicators have increased, he immediately rushes to the attack, intending to start a battle with the huge mutant. At the last moment, his fist stops right in front of the beast's nose, and waves of energy from his blows spread across the ground. The main character realizes that there is no monster in front of him, but his little tame dog Goldie, who has grown very much in 4 days. He begins to joyfully wag his tail and lick his owner, rejoicing at his return. Michael decides to check his skills and notice that all the evolution points have disappeared, and a new improvement point has appeared called Gene Enhancement. I'm trying to remember everything that happened. He understands that something amazing obviously happened to him, and most likely all the points were spent on his evolution. Plunging into his consciousness, he sees that the sanctuary tree of evolution has also changed and apparently, he has experienced the first improvement of genes. When asked what happened to him, the context menu answers that the main character reached his limit, and a meteorite fragment helped him overcome it. Michael remembers that every person has a genetic limit, and in a past life he saw high-ranking fighters who tried to overcome it, but in the end died. This term is called gene restrictions, and apparently our protagonist is able to develop indefinitely bypassing this prohibition. Having realized what happened to him, Michael, riding a dog, returns to the survivors, who are both surprised and very frightened. Michael explains that until recently Goldie was very tiny, but after eating so many zombies he grew to such size. Megan, like everyone else present, does not understand how the monster can be his pet. The main character says that this is a long story and he will tell about it later, but now he needs to deal with the crowd of infected people pouring here. Noticing a huge number of zombies on the horizon, Megan realizes that their strength is not enough to resist such a horde. The girl says that they have nowhere else to go, and they were able to find this place after a week of searching after the start of the apocalypse, and they have no other place. And Michael begins to warm up and asks the girl not to worry, because there is a military shelter 40 kilometers from here, and they can go there. The main character asks them to wait in a safe place while he alone deals with all the infected, and Megan says that this is just madness. Michael asks you to follow his instructions and then, riding his tame dog, goes into battle. Lena, looking at everything that is happening, asks her commander whether this stranger will be able to return safe and sound and escort them to the shelter. Having reached the right place, the main character decides not to fight with his bare hands and tear the road sign out of the ground. He attracts the infected with a loud bang of metal and asks Goldie to stand aside because he wants to test his new abilities. Faced with a crowd of infected, he makes a powerful blow with a road sign, destroying a huge number of low-level zombies in a second. Michael understands that in a short period he has become much stronger, making his blows many times more deadly. Gradually dealing with ordinary zombies, an awakened infected who has reached the initial level becomes on his way. The classification that our main character uses has been preserved from a past life, when the infected were assigned a rank, and this individual, although he has incredible strength, is still not gifted with intelligence. Trying to deliver a powerful blow to the mutant's head with a road sign, it does not bring visible results, and the metal bends like plasticine. At this time, the survivors, led by Megan, finish collecting supplies from their old shelter and wait for the return of our protagonist. The man in the suit begins to panic, suggesting that he may not return and then they will turn out to be easy prey while here. The girl says that they need to stick to the plan and not panic, otherwise they will have no chance of survival. The man says that they saw perfectly well how a crowd of zombies was rushing towards him, and in such a situation not a single person is able to survive, and if they just sit and wait, then everyone will die. He adds that if they had not saved this guy that time, they would not have been in this situation, and if he voluntarily decided to become bait, then they need to get out of here as soon as possible. Megan asks her to stop causing panic and acting recklessly, asking her friend Leonardo to come to her defense. The gray-haired man says that he also thinks that they need to leave because they don't know if that guy is alive, and they shouldn't take such risks. For a second, there is a dead silence among the survivors, and the girl agrees to go and check how things are going at the front. Leonardo and Lena try to dissuade her, but Megan declares that this is the best option she can take. At that very second, their conversation is interrupted by the loud scream of a zombie who is behind them. Deciding that imminent death awaits them all, the infected immediately receives a powerful blow to his skull and flies away in an unknown direction. Michael stands in front of the survivors, saying that he ran into a little trouble on the way back and hopes he didn't keep them waiting too long. Megan says that they should be the ones apologizing because the police sent the civilian into the thick of things. The main character reports that if it weren't for their help, he would have been a corpse a long time ago, and as a sign of gratitude, he cleared most of the zombies in the area, which would allow them to move on. Michael says that riding Goldie they can get to the shelter, and the road should be clear of mutants. Megan is quite taken aback by such a statement, and decides to clarify why the main character will not go to the shelter with them. Michael states that he has unfinished business, and needs to find his little sister as soon as possible. Having seated all the survivors on the back of her tame dog, Megan returns his backpack to him, and wishes him good luck in finding his sister. Finally, the girl decides to find out the name of our main character, and asks to come back as soon as possible. As he watches them go, the protagonist hopes that they will not have time to get to the shelter in the near future, because at this midnight the first stage of the apocalypse will end and awakened zombies will appear. The main character's increased physical performance allows him to move around the city ruins at incredible speed. In a short time, having reached his old house, he notices that mountains of corpses are lying everywhere, and traces of shooting are also visible. Using a walkie-talkie, Michael tries to contact Sylvia while trying to find out why the military was clearing areas and not evacuating civilians. Climbing the stairs to the upper floors of the building, he suggests that these could be ordinary looters who, taking advantage of martial law, are causing unrest. Having reached his apartment, he notices that everything around him has been looted, and the front door has simply been broken down. Sylvia is also not inside the apartment, and all he finds is a wheelchair and a broken photograph lying on the floor. At this same second, the main character is overcome by incredible rage, and he promises to finish off everyone involved in the kidnapping of his younger sister. In the evening of the same day, a group of survivors drives around the city in a car and shoots the infected who come their way. At one point, their car, filled to the brim with supplies, gets stuck in a crowd of zombies, and the driver asks his commander what to do next. Their commander turns out to be the man who kidnapped the protagonist's sister, and he says that he has already told his uncle their location and they will be taken away soon. Sylvia asks her captors why they are doing this. Because humanity should have united and fought together against such a terrible threat. The man grins, saying that he has no desire to die for others and now is the time to use the situation to expand his power. At that very moment, their conversation is interrupted by Michael, who lands on the hood of their car. He immediately grabs one of the shooters defending the car and throws him into the crowd of infected. The driver of the car tries to threaten the main character with a pistol, but he sends him flying with a powerful kick. Their commander takes a knife out of his pocket, and threatening to kill the defenseless girl, orders the main character not to move and to bow his head. Michael, experiencing incredible anger, breaks the man's hand with lightning speed, knocking the knife out of his hand and sending him into shock. He immediately begins to threaten the main character, trying to trump his family connections and the fact that they will definitely find him and save him. The main character says that he knows very well that in front of him is a local bandit who uses the martial law and his uncle's connections to do whatever he wants. Michael holds the man's body over a crowd of infected people, threatening to throw him to be torn to pieces by this entire crowd. The kidnapper of his sister begins to pitifully beg for mercy, saying that he will do whatever our main character wants and will carry out any of his orders. Realizing that persuasion does not work for our protagonist, his pleas are replaced by aggression and harsh threats. At this time, 2 helicopters appear above the heads of our heroes, which apparently arrived at the call of this man to save them. The man begins to laugh, thinking that salvation is close, but the main character simply lets him go, and he falls into a crowd of infected that begins to eat him. One of the people who arrived by helicopter notices everything that is happening and asks to connect him with Commander Roger. A man reports that his nephew was killed by some unknown youth, and that a little girl is in his company. Commander Roger, who apparently was the same uncle who was threatened by the murdered man, orders the main character to clear the area. Fire from 2 helicopters opens on our heroes, and Michael, holding his defenseless sister in his arms, tries to find shelter. Having time to react to the fact that they were fired upon with missiles, he moves to the nearest building to find temporary shelter there. He manages to run inside and avoid a direct hit from such a powerful weapon and save his younger sister. The main character finds a safe room in which he leaves Sylvia and asks him to wait here until he completely understands. The girl understands the gravity of the current circumstances and asks her brother to be very careful and returns safe and sound. After which Michael, leaving his sister in a safe place, returns to the street to deal with 2 military helicopters. Having come under fire, he realizes that fighting while on the ground is not very profitable, and decides to retreat. The sounds of gunfire attracted a huge number of zombies from all over the area, making the escape route very difficult. Thanks to his superhuman skills, Michael manages to break through the crowd of mutants. The military commander on one of the helicopters, observing the situation, cannot believe his eyes, and assumes that this guy is not an ordinary person. He orders the pilot to find a tall building nearby and land him on the roof, after which he continues to pursue the guy. Having landed my captain on Michael, I open fire from a machine gun firing up to 70 rounds per second. Seeing how our protagonist manages to dodge the lead rain, the machine gunner cannot believe it, because an ordinary person would already be a corpse. At the same time, the military captain, being on the roof and armed with a sniper rifle, takes aim at our main character. He fires a precise shot with a large caliber cartridge, hoping to finish the guy off with one shot. Michael's reaction time and perception allow him to react to the sound of the gunshot and dodge the projectile, preventing it from hitting his heart, but he is still wounded. The captain is told on the radio that the object has disappeared into one of the buildings. I hit it. The blood will attract the infected. Continue monitoring. Michael is trying to stop the bleeding. How lucky I am. Just a millimeter to the left, and I would already be dead. Lost in thought, the main character loses concentration for a few seconds and comes to his senses only when a rocket flies into his building. A powerful explosion occurs, completely destroying the entire building and breaking out all the windows within a radius of several kilometers with a blast wave. The pilots report that the target has been destroyed, but the captain manages to notice some movement under the pile of rubble. The smoke and cloud of dust left behind by the explosion dissipates, and the military see a huge dog with golden fur emitting a terrifying roar. "Goldie, you really helped me out, baby. You're just in time. I really need your help." The familiar releases huge wings from his body and asks his master to attack with him. While the stunned military cannot understand where this monster came from, Michael, riding a dog, attacks one of the helicopters. At this time, the pilot of the second helicopter, watching his colleague crash, loses sight of our heroes. In a panic, he quickly hurries to report to the captain that the target was lost, when suddenly he is interrupted by Michael, who climbed into the helicopter cockpit. The captain of the squad, hearing on the radio that his fighters were defeated, requests reinforcements saying that they have found a survivor. At this time, Mike, thinking that the battle is over, lands on Earth with the desire to introduce Goldie to his sister. His joy is interrupted by the military captain. "Hey, kid, it's too early to rejoice. This girl is clearly very important to you." Mike, seeing that his sister is being threatened with a weapon, begins to scream and demand to let her go immediately. The man, leaning the muzzle of a rifle against Sylvia's head, declares that he would be interested in checking what is faster, the bullet or the reaction of our hero. "Put your weapon down, you need me, right? My sister has nothing to do with this. I will surrender without resistance, but promise me that you will let her go." Mike, with his hands raised, moves towards the captain, finally ordering Goldie to take Sylvia to safety. At this time, an infantryman armed with a rocket launcher, who apparently arrived with reinforcements, reports that the target has been captured and is in the affected area. The captain, with a grin, gives the order to open fire and a shell is fired at our hero, producing a powerful explosion. The military rejoices that the task is completed, but as soon as the fog clears, Michael's faithful dog appears at the site of the explosion, who took the entire blow upon himself. The captain shouts into the radio that the target is still alive and we need to move on to Plan B. But it turns out to be too late, and Michael delivers a crushing blow from behind his attacker. The man, having flown several tens of meters and received a bunch of wounds, lies in a mountain of rubble and, miraculously surviving, orders everyone to be destroyed. More missiles are fired in Sylvia's direction, while Michael struggles to save his sister. A moment before the explosion, he manages to cover the girl with his body, taking the entire blow on himself. Falling to the ground, Sylvia looks at her bloody hands, hoping that her beloved brother is still alive. "Brother, don't scare me, don't even dare fall asleep. What's wrong with you? Don't leave me alone." Meanwhile, the captain still manages to get to his feet, at the same time rejoicing that all his limbs are intact and he will not remain crippled. Michael, opening his eyes slightly, wipes the tears from Sylvia's face with his finger and asks for forgiveness for not being able to protect her. "Don't cry, Sylvia. I'm very glad that I could look at you again. This all seems like a dream in which I want to stay forever." After these words, Michael's hand falls to the ground, and his sister begins to scream at the top of her voice and waves of powerful energy come out of her body. The captain can't believe that they fired so many missiles at this guy and he's still breathing. But his thoughts are interrupted by the snow that starts falling from the sky in such a warm season. Sylvia, in a fit of anger, stands up naked, being disabled. An enormous power begins to accumulate around her. The military captain does not understand what the hell is happening before his eyes, because ordinary people cannot control the elements. The girl, screaming that it was her fault for what happened and her weakness led her and her brother to this, begins to freeze everything around her using the newly awakened power of ice. The captain's body begins to quickly turn into an ice statue and his movements are constrained by ice and the fear of imminent death. At the same time, someone from an unknown control point is watching what is happening and says that a source of power, absolute zero, an S-rank evolution, was discovered right above them. The girl named Juno is quite surprised. An S-rank warrior has already appeared and this is really a big event. She asks her assistant Rabbit to stop the airship on which they are traveling because she wants to personally go down and scout out the situation. Meanwhile, Commander Roger plays shogi with his old friend Commander Winston. "I started playing on the defensive, because your attacks have become very aggressive, my old friend." They discuss the situation that is developing in the world, in which Roger does not intend to sit on the defensive, because if he does not start hitting back, all of humanity will sooner or later be destroyed. In such a situation, it is reckless to waste time on protecting pawns. You have aged considerably, Winston. The commander's young subordinate was about to stand up for his commander, but he managed to stop him. Winston says that, according to his information, Roger is recruiting soldiers from unofficial groups. This is true, my friend, because in the current situation, the one who first gets these troops will get all the remaining power. His answer is interrupted by a subordinate and reports the incident. He is informed by phone that communication with the entire detachment that was sent to clean up the suspicious guy has been lost. Flock of sheep, you can't handle 2 kids, you always have to do everything yourself. Roger apologizes, saying that he has already won and asks Winston to think again about stopping building shelters and transferring all the forces into his hands to fight the infected. The old man leans back in his chair. Maybe I really have aged, but our main task is to protect civilians. He thinks that if the city has already fallen, then all his attempts to save people no longer matter. Deciding to ask his subordinate Scott what he thinks about this situation, he replies that Commander Winston is still very young and all his decisions are thoughtful and pragmatic. Scott, and you are straightforward. I always like that about you. I promise that as long as I live, I will protect the common people. Now go find out what Roger was talking about on the phone. The subordinate smiles, encouraged by the words of his captain, and puts his palm to his forehead, ready to carry out the order. At this time, the rabbit tells Juno that she needs a little time to find a place to land. The girl asks her not to land the ship, but simply to lower the height at which she can jump out. Flying over the battle site, Juno jumps to the ground and uses the blocks of ice created by Sylvia as landing ramps. Finding herself in front of our heroes, she notices that they used too much power and simply passed out. Looking at the frozen military man, he is surprised how the newly awakened skill turned out to be so powerful. Using a walkie-talkie, the rabbit reports that this is already the 4th of 12 S-rank warriors. According to inquiries made, this girl is not listed as the owner of an absolute 0 on the list. Instead, her appearance does not match. Juno, looking at the wounded girl, suggests that there may be several owners of absolute 0. She takes the girl to her ship, leaving Michael alone, saying that they need to go in search of the next awakened ones. After some time, being on a hair's breadth of the main character's body, the tree of evolution is activated, permeating his entire body. The system reports that the right first level has been opened and the process of divine evolution has begun, which has launched a huge number of tree roots throughout the earth. The evolution tree began to search throughout the area for any living beings and mutants, starting to destroy them and pumping energy out of them. All this power, collected in a matter of hours, began to flow straight into the heart of our protagonist, saving him from inevitable death. At this time, his subordinate Scott enters Commander Winston's office and reports that he has completed the assignment given to him. He hands the commander a tablet with a video recording saying that this guy and the little girl were pursued by Roger's people, but he managed to neutralize them alone. However, he was wounded, and then the entire area was covered in ice for unknown reasons. At the end of the recording, rays resembling tree roots began to emanate from this place, after which the camera turned off. In the last seconds of the video, Winston notices a stranger appearing, whose face is too blurry to be identified. The commander orders the cattle to go to that very place and find out what happened to this guy and, if possible, bring him to headquarters. Something very inexplicable is happening. Roger's powers are becoming stronger, and my capabilities have a limit. This world needs a hero. A few hours later, the roots of the tree of evolution begin to retract back, penetrating Michael's body. The system informs him that 1,000 experience points have reached the peak, which in turn triggers automatic distribution. At this very moment, the main character opens his eyes, trying to understand how he managed to survive and what happened to him. Having looked around and not finding Goldie and his sister nearby, he rushes to examine the surroundings, completely shrouded in ice, hoping that his loved ones are still alive. In such a hopeless situation, he decides to turn to the tree of evolution to find answers to his questions and penetrates deep into his own consciousness. The system informs the main character that the deification plan has been put into action and only one attempt has been allocated for its implementation. We also inform Michael that he has awakened and all his characteristics have been increased to the 5th level of strength. Looking at his stats, he he realizes that his physical strength has increased incredibly since awakening. Thanks to the meteorite fragment he received earlier, a new skill called absorption is revealed to him. From his past life, Michael knows that the power of skills cannot be increased and it grows only with an increase in the physical characteristics of the wearer, and therefore, his new ability is equivalent to S rank. For a moment he thinks that he became the first awakened from the rank, but at the last moment he remembers that he noticed a similar reaction in Sylvia and perhaps all this ice in the area is her doing. While he was exploring the surroundings, he did not find the body of his sister, and decides that he needs to find out what happened while he was passed out by picking up a fallen hairpin from the ground. Approaching that same captain, encased in a block of ice, he breaks it into small pieces and says that if the military is involved in this, they won't have long to live. At this time, a man driving a car, driving past the checkpoint, tells the private not to sleep at the post. It turns out that this is the cattle saying that during such an important period of shelter construction they need to be as careful as possible, and not let a single infected person enter the territory. Watching him, Commander Roger and his subordinate, with whom Scott was visiting, understand that Winston is trying to extract secret information. Meanwhile, in one of the buildings abandoned by people, the main character decided to gather his thoughts and think about a plan for further action. Taking the soul into his head, the thought comes that the best way to get into the military unit is to go through the shelter, to which he sent Goldie along with his new acquaintances. When morning comes, he sets out holding a photograph of his younger sister in his hands and promises to save her. Having set off and moving towards the shelter, he easily deals with ordinary infected people thanks to his new physical capabilities. I'm trying to use my new recently acquired absorption skill. The system tells him that it is impossible to use it on ordinary opponents. Assuming that a stronger opponent is needed to use the skill, he stumbles upon an advanced infected who emits an ominous aura. The infected turns out to be quite strong since he is an awakened F rank and can easily crush the ground under his feet with powerful blows. Analyzing his opponent, Michael theorizes that his strength and skin color make him the owner of a very common rage skill that many had in his past life. Dodging his attacks, he manages to pull off a grab and knocks out the zombie with a powerful blow from both legs. While his opponent is unconscious, he manages to use his absorption ability, and this time manages to activate it. Before this I only used it on awakened zombies. I wonder what will happen now. Absorbing energy from the body of a defeated enemy, powerful waves of multicolored energy begin to hover around, and the system informs that the absorption is complete and decay has occurred. At the same moment, Michael notices a new rage skill inside the system, the scale of which is filled by 1%. As far as I remember, in a past life there were very few people who could awaken two abilities, and there were no people with a large number at all. The main character understands that now he only needs to collect enough skills and fragments, and with a genetic limitation he will be able to evolve almost endlessly. His thoughts are interrupted by a strange sound and huge waves of energy fall from the sky, similar to those that occurred when absorbing a new ability. A powerful wave of force pierces his body and Michael, in horror, does not understand what is happening to him, after which a huge mutated beast crawls out of the ground and, according to the system, it is at the level of an awakened monster. Michael's insight tells him that someone much more powerful is approaching here. At the same second, a powerful explosion occurs right in front of him with peals of thunder, illuminating everything within a radius of several hundred meters. After the smoke clears, he sees in front of him his familiar Goldie, who turns out to be alive. The main character is very happy about the return of his pet, but understands that this is not the time to become limp and he needs to deal with this monster. A faithful friend stops him, asking the owner to give him the opportunity to deal with him alone, to which Michael gives his consent. Having received approval from its owner, the beast rushes into battle with an enemy who, in appearance, surpasses it in strength. Goldie begins to deliver crushing blows with her claws, making Michael realize that he, too, has evolved greatly during his absence. After a few minutes of battle, Goldie decides to launch a powerful, crushing attack and his entire body is covered in a bright flame shield. Having managed to capture his opponent, he begins to concentrate a huge amount of energy in his mouth, and literally a moment later, a powerful explosion occurs and not a trace remains of the awakened monster. You are a good boy. Congratulations on your evolution. But with such dimensions it will be difficult for you to move and it would be better to shrink to your previous size. Obeying the orders of his master in gold, he shrinks to his original form, turning into a small harmless puppy. Thinking about where to go next, the main character, using his detection skills, scans the entire area, sensing a huge number of signs of life nearby and decides to go there. Ms. Juno, I am connecting you with headquarters for a further report on the situation. On the screen that turns on, you can see a blurry image and the silhouette of a person who is interested in how the case is progressing. The situation is calm, but something unexpected happened, which I wanted to report. When we arrived at the place where the meteorite energy came from, the fragment itself was no longer there. In his place, we found an S-rank warrior with her skill absolute 0, but she is not on the lists. I took her on board and am waiting for your further instructions. A mysterious man through the screen says that this whole situation is very strange, like the warrior who is not on the lists. The man orders Juno to immediately deliver the girl to headquarters, after which the rabbit heads back to the base. At this very time, a handful of survivors armed with machine guns are trying to fight off the wave of infected. Among them is Scott, and Assistant Commander Roger, who does not understand how his colleague ended up here. I went on a mission, but Commander Roger did something to my car. I'm stuck here. How did you end up here? Roger's subordinate says that he accompanied the scientists to the shelter, but suddenly lightning struck their car and disabled it. He also adds that the people behind him are incredibly important for the future fate of humanity, and they must be saved at any cost. Scott explains that they won't be able to hold them off indefinitely, and they need to develop an escape plan. At the same second, their conversation is interrupted by a collapsed wall, through which a zombie of colossal size passes, which they cannot cope with. Roger's subordinate rushes to the attack, ordering everyone to protect the scientists while he distracts the zombies to himself. Scott orders everyone to retreat and reduce the battle formation to save ammunition, because now the priority task is to protect the scientists. At this time, Commander Roger's subordinate begins to fight back against the ordinary advanced infected with his bare hands. He continues to hold off the zombies attacking him, ordering everyone to retreat and take the scientists to a safe place. Scott, realizing that they are in a hopeless situation, orders everyone to follow his instructions and leave the battle site as quickly as possible. Before he can finish his sentence, an object resembling a human body rushes past his face at a very high speed and crashes into the wall. Looking at the pile of rubble, he notices a wounded colleague, who apparently could not hold out for long against the colossal zombie. The shadow of a huge mutant obscures him and the scientists, and at that moment it seems to them that their lives are hanging by a thread. At that same second, a powerful explosion was heard behind them, and something with incredible speed managed to protect them from the colossal mutant. On the corpse of the defeated enemy stands Michael, who has already managed to absorb another percentage of the rage skill. Being incredibly impressed, Scott remembers that standing in front of him is the very guy whom Commander Winston ordered him to find. To his question, "Are you the same guy whose name is Michael?" the main character replies that it is him, indignant about how the military man knows his name. Scott understands that the goal of his task is in front of him, and wants to ask the protagonist for a certain favor, but he is interrupted. "Answer my question first, your Commander Roger, will you?" The stunned military man, not understanding what is happening, answers the truth and says that his commander is Mr. Winston. He also explains that they, along with the leadership, are aware of his situation and the conflict with Commander Roger, and they do not know who he is and why he is here. Remembering my past life, Michael remembers that after the apocalypse, all of humanity fell into madness, and only one elderly general stood up to protect him to the end. When the commander found out what you went through, he wanted to meet in person. I hope you will return to the shelter with us. At this moment, their conversation is interrupted by a powerful explosion and a mutant appears from the crowd of infected, whose hands are covered with lightning. Michael asks his new acquaintances to protect scientists and wounded comrades while he himself deals with the enemy. "Goldie, you should also watch out for them just in case, but don't transform unnecessarily, otherwise they won't let you into the shelter." Looking at the crowd of opponents, the main hero understands that only the one with lightning is awakened, and everyone else is low-ranking, and there is no need to use the skill. Without having time to think about a plan of attack, a crowd of pawns immediately pounces on him, and it seems to Michael that an advanced zombie is capable of controlling the weak. He uses them as a distraction, and while the protagonist is distracted, he tries to attack him with lightning bolts. The main character is surprised that the zombies have already evolved to the level where they began to develop intelligence, and, apparently, events are moving much faster than they were in his past. At this time, Commander Roger's wounded subordinate says that this advanced mutant is the one who hit their machine with a thunderclap and knocked them out of action. During the battle, one of the discharges of electricity hits the roof above our heroes, breaking the supports, and a huge number of fragments begin to fall to the ground. Shards of roof and metal falling to the ground raise a huge column of dust, the outline of which can be seen as Goldie takes on her true form. After the smoke and dust clear, all the survivors are unharmed, not understanding how they managed to avoid damage. The girl scientist says that it seemed to her, and she saw a huge dog with wings that saved them while looking at the little puppy. Goldie's mind flashes with memories that he was ordered not to take his true form, otherwise he would not be allowed into the shelter, and he was paralyzed by fear. The little puppy begins to roll around on the floor, pretending to be a harmless and weak creature so as not to arouse unnecessary suspicion. Meanwhile, another colossal fat zombie intervenes in the battle between Michael and the advanced mutant. Looking at him for a second, the main character thinks that his opponent has the skill of controlling awakened individuals. He immediately attacks him, deciding that he needs to get rid of one enemy as soon as possible, because together they will become much more dangerous. Survivors watching the battle along with scientists cannot believe that an ordinary person is able to repel such formidable opponents alone. Having exhausted the colossal mutant, Michael manages to use the absorption skill on him and receive another percentage of rage, after which he tells the electric zombie that it is his turn, and apparently this does not make him very happy. Ultimately, having found the right moment, the main character manages to get close to the enemy and use his ability on him. The enemy is defeated, and the evolution tree reports that a new lightning skill has been unlocked and 1% of his skills have been obtained. A handful of survivors rejoice at the victory of the protagonist, while scientists, meanwhile, discuss the crystals remaining in the bodies of the defeated mutants. The professor in glasses, looking at the artifact, says that this confirms the results of his research, and since yesterday these crystals have been appearing on the bodies of the dead. The old scientist extends his hand to the main character, saying that his name is Bruce and he thanks him for saving them. In a past life, the professor and his team were able to obtain energy from the cores of monsters, and thanks to him, genetic medicines appeared. During the most terrible times, it was this invention that helped ordinary people awaken and fight back against inevitable death. Realizing that the greatest man who determined the fate of humanity is standing in front of him, Michael shakes his hand and says that he is immensely glad to meet them. The intern asks Professor Bruce to come to him because he needs help, and the main character says goodbye to him, hoping for a further opportunity to meet him again. While the scientists, without wasting a minute, continue their research on the infected, Scott helps his friend get up, who thanks Michael. "I'm always happy to help, you got it worse than anyone else. I need to get you out of here. I'll try to find us a car." While they are not deciding how to get to the shelter, they hear the worried cries of a group of scientists who are surprised by something. "Impossible! Am I wrong? All dead bodies must have crystals, why aren't they here?" Bruce assumes that something was missing in his research, and he hoped that he could easily use these crystals. Michael understands that the professor has already begun to examine the cores of monsters and most likely he absorbed them with his ability, so he needs to correctly explain this to the professor. He decides to clarify what exactly Bruce is talking about, realizing that he should not interrupt his research due to an oversight and try to push him to the right train of thought. The professor hands him a green crystal, saying that he needs to understand where these things come from and how they can be used in the fight against the infected. Michael says that it is unclear why they are called genetic nuclei, and he has already managed to eat several of them, after which he became stronger. Bruce, indignant at how one can be so reckless, scolds the young man, explaining that it was too dangerous to eat these kernels because they could contain a virus. After which he continues his thoughts on the fact that this, in any case, helped the main character become much stronger, and most likely they can be used somehow. The professor begins to develop his own theory. The protagonist inside himself is glad that he gave the professor the necessary food for thought. Pointing to the two defeated advanced infected, he explains that he may have accidentally destroyed the cores in these two individuals while he was fighting them. Having completed all the preparations and having found the car after some time, our heroes move towards the shelter, and Scott, while driving, asks Michael about how he ate the cannonballs. The main character says that the zombie cores he ate were the first to awaken, and he was just lucky, and it would be too dangerous for ordinary people to eat them. Michael perfectly understands the military man's desire to become as strong as possible, but warns him against rash actions. Scott says that Captain Roger is secretly gathering awakened soldiers while Winston spends his time building a shelter, and he wants to protect his commander. Don't worry about your captain, he will never lose to Roger, and I am 100% sure of that. After some time, our heroes reach the walls of the base where the construction of a shelter is in full swing. Looking at how the preparatory work is going on, Scott explains to the main character that those awakened with combat abilities went to Roger's troops, and the rest helped Winston in construction. Getting out of the car, Michael notices a red-haired girl driving towards him at high speed and asks him to get out of the way. Losing control, the girl falls off the scooter, and the main hero manages to catch her in his arms. Realizing the situation in which she found herself, the girl immediately begins to bow to our protagonist, asking forgiveness for the inconvenience. Standing next to him, Scott, realizing that his friend Olivia is in front of him, asks the girl what she is doing here. Captain, what a blessing that you are alive. Commander Winston was unable to contact you, and we thought that you died on the mission. Scott hits the girl on the head, saying that's not what he asked, to which Olivia replies that she came to meet the new survivors. Michael, for now I will report everything to the captain, and you go through the verification procedure along with other survivors, and I will try to arrange a meeting with Winston for you as soon as possible. Watching the scientist and his new friend go, Michael understands that it is better not to get into trouble until he gets comfortable in the new environment. Meanwhile, Olivia asks all the survivors to line up for further testing to see which people may be infected. The main character understands that Commander Winston is doing everything right, because in his past life he knew many cases of terrible tragedies after violating security measures. Having filled out the form given to him after some time, he passes by a girl he knows who is accepting forms from other survivors. This turns out to be the girl he saved earlier, Lena, who is very happy to meet our main character and that he is safe. The girl hurries to thank our protagonist for recently saving their entire group from imminent death. Michael is very glad that they managed to survive, and also that the girl joined the team of doctors. Lena reports that the captain of their squad, Megan, occupies a much higher position and recently she had problems. At this moment, they are interrupted by the cries of a disgruntled crowd of survivors who ask the two lovebirds to quickly finish their dialogue. The girl says that she needs to work, and Michael finally asks Lena to look after his puppy. The girl is very happy to meet the little puppy, realizing that this is the same familiar that helped them get to the shelter. Alina agrees and finally suggests that Michael have dinner together today because she is very happy to see him. After some time, the main character ends up taking tests, and the nurse asks him to go to the waiting room where he will be informed of the test results. After some time, a menacing-looking man enters the room where all the survivors gather and asks the name of one man. From the crowd comes the voice of a man, who is immediately grabbed by two military men who say that he is infected and needs to be immediately quarantined. The survivor tries to say that there is some kind of mistake here, but the commander immediately shuts him up by saying that this is not a kindergarten and the situation is very serious. The man, realizing that he has no choice, stops resisting, and on his neck behind his shirt there are traces of a spreading infection. Everyone else is not infected. The person named Michael should stay here, and the rest can go rest and start helping in the construction of the shelter tomorrow. The survivors leave the room, looking around at our protagonist, suggesting that he is very unlucky and will face the same fate as the same stranger who was just taken into quarantine. The commander says that he was informed about a certain important person in his name, and asks to follow him to a special room. Michael sits down on the bed where he is asked to wait for a meeting with Commander Winston, and all this time he looks at a photo of his little sister. At this time, somewhere in the laboratory, Sylvia is in a strange capsule, and people nearby are discussing the fact that her blood test did not show the result they needed. After some time of waiting, a knock is heard in our main character's room, and someone asks his permission to enter. Lena enters the room, greets Michael and asks him to come with her to dinner, saying that she will take him to the dining room. They walk together along the corridors of the shelter, and Michael compliments the girl that he didn't recognize her in other clothes, and she looks very cute. Lena offers to visit her commander Megan and surprise her because she will also be very glad to meet him. The girl also says that the problems she spoke about are related to the fact that Megan has awakened, and Commander Roger is trying with all his might to win her over to his side. This information begins to anger the main character, realizing that this headstrong warrior is trying to stick his nose where it doesn't belong. Their conversation is interrupted by an alarm, which reports that a conflict situation is occurring in the dining room on the 3rd floor. The girl suggests that this is most likely connected with her commander, and Roger's subordinates are again trying to bother Megan. At this very time, the mustachioed man tells Megan that Roger greatly appreciates her abilities and once again asks her to come over to their side. The girl says that she will not give up her principles for any money and valuables that they offer her because Roger's politics are disgusting to her. Megan is about to leave, but she is stopped by 2 men whom Michael saved with her and block her path. One of them says that they don't want to work for old man Winston all their lives, and since she is a very capable girl, they don't just remind her that she needs to choose the right side. Megan begins to lose her temper and her body begins to emit a huge amount of energy, and her eyes begin to glow red. Everything around begins to tremble, and the man notices that the telekinesis that the girl possesses is incredible, and now he understands why the captain needs her so much. After which he says that not only she awakened powers in herself, and they both have F-rank abilities, the element of fire and metal transformation. The man throws a bunch of flame at the girl and says that today she will go with them no matter the cost. Michael, who appeared at this very second, manages to repel the attack with his bare hands, reflecting the flying fireball. Everyone present understands that standing in front of them is the same guy who single-handedly managed to save them a few days ago. At the same moment, the mustachioed man behind them asks where this kid came from and why he dares to interfere with their conversation. The awakened man with the power of fire asks his commander not to worry, because now he will teach this young boy a good lesson. Preparing to be reflected in such 2 awakened people, Michael thinks about whether it is possible to use absorption on people, but at the last moment he stops, realizing that this could lead to their death and attract unnecessary attention. Already familiar with a large number of skills awakened from a past life, he understands that half of his strength will be enough against metal transformation. After he dealt with one of the awakened ones with 1 blow, he asks his friend why exactly they went over to Roger's side. Having not received a constructive answer to his question, but only listening to requests for mercy, he knocks out the second attacker with 1 blow. Megan, standing behind him, is surprised how the guy managed to defeat 2 awakened ones in just 2 blows. Moving towards the mustachioed man, he tries to intimidate Michael by telling him not to come near him because he directly reports to Roger. Without listening to his hysterical screams, the main character grabs him by the head and lifts him up at arm's length, forcing him into silence. Megan is trying to stop the main character, the piglet, from letting the mustachioed man go, because if he dies, they will both have big problems. At this very second, armed infantrymen are climbing the stairs to the 3rd floor, asking everyone to immediately calm down. Soldiers surround Megan and our protagonist, and their commander orders the rioters to surrender immediately. Michael is already beginning to accumulate energy in his hand and is about to fight back the military, asking if they are too thin in the gut to raise a hand against him. "How dare you threaten us? We are the law here. If you do not follow the instructions of the authorities, we took you out of the shelter." Megan manages to stop the main character, asking him to calm down, otherwise they, together with Commander Winston, will suffer greatly. Our heroes are handcuffed and taken to another room while the mustachioed man continues to behave defiantly, looking down on them. "Megan, I have a request. As soon as you are free, find out about a girl named Sylvia. This is my sister, whom I lost because of Commander Roger, and now I don't know where she is, so if you can, try to find out." While our heroes are being taken to another place, a crowd of ordinary survivors are discussing the battle of the awakened ones, not understanding how one guy could defeat 2 of Roger's subordinates. Standing nearby, Lena and Goldie are worried about our main character, hoping that everything will be fine with them. Moving along the corridors, the mustachioed man stops next to the punishment cell, saying that the girl should be taken to the commander, and the guy should be left here. Michael completely obeys the orders of his willful commanders, fearing for Megan's safety, and is sent deeper into the punishment cell. Once at the bottom, he sees in front of him a huge number of muscular men, creating a terrifying appearance. The mustachioed man orders everyone to make this arrogant boy understand why you can't go against him. And even if he dies here, no one will remember him. Michael easily breaks the handcuffs, realizing that Megan is no longer here and he doesn't have to hold back. With incredible ease, with the help of ordinary blows, he deals with a dozen trained fighters. You understand that the situation is not going well. The mustachioed captain, fearing for his safety, once again tries to threaten the main character and asks him not to come too close. His disgusting and vile behavior begins to cross all boundaries, and he holds a test tube with a virus from the laboratory in his hands, saying that if something happens to him, his subordinates will poison the young girl Lena. At this very second, their conversation is interrupted by Scott, who, along with other armed military men, goes down to the punishment cell asking his colleague for an explanation. The mustachioed man points towards the defeated fighters and says that this young man wounded 6 officers and should be punished. Scott grabs the man's hand, asking what the test tube with the virus is doing in his hands and where he got it. He orders the man to be immediately delivered to Captain Winston, saying that now no one will save him. A cruel punishment awaits him. Michael thanks Scott for saving him and wants to ask him something, but he interrupts him by saying that first they need to leave this room that smells of blood. After some time, they both go up the elevator, and when Michael asks where they are going, they answer that he will soon find out about everything himself. Rising to the top floor and opening the door, Michael sees Commander Winston in front of him, who greets him and asks him to sit down in an empty seat. The main character is very surprised by the long-awaited meeting with the commander, because in a past life he saw only his statue, and now he can talk to him as an ordinary person. Dear Michael, I'll tell you straight, I think I guess your purpose for arriving at the shelter. Commander Roger sent a squad to kill you and your sister, and after the battle your sister disappeared. The main character is quite taken aback by Old Man Winston's awareness, and asks how he knew about it. And after a few seconds he adds to his answer that since he knows about the reasons for his appearance here, he must guess that his main goal is to take revenge. When the apocalypse began, Roger and I were military men, but he only cared about power and wealth, not other people. I know about all his plans and that he wants to seize the shelter. Listening to Commander Winston's speech, Michael decides to directly ask if he is ready for an open confrontation with Roger. Exactly. But we are not in a good position, and we need your help because I know that you are incredibly strong. Commander Winston says that Roger controls about half of the entire army and secretly recruits awakened warriors into his ranks. Judging by my data, he already has about 100 awakened ones, and we only have 20 and our strengths vary too much. Michael says that they still have a chance because Dr. Bruce's laboratory is under their control. Commander Winston says that Roger is interested in parts of the shelter that are developing various weapons. The main character explains that most likely the commander should have reported that ordinary people can also become awakened. Winston says that he received such information and still cannot believe that this is possible. Michael dispels his doubts by adding to his answer that people can get the source weapons. Inside the bodies of zombies there is a special material called genetic nuclei, and with their help you can get very powerful weapons. Commander Winston immediately jumps up from his seat, slamming his hands on the table, saying that the young man is simply lying to him now and cannot believe it. The main character perfectly understands the commander, as well as his mistrust, and asks to use a pen and a piece of paper. Michael describes on paper some instructions and hands the sheet to the commander, saying that the basic ideas for creating source weapons are described here. He also says that if this information falls into the hands of Professor Bruce, he will be absolutely delighted. Winston understands that in front of him is a difficult young man who was a university student. After all, not even a week had passed since the apocalypse, and he knows so much. The main character is very glad that the old man does not ask him how he knows all this information and allows him to keep the secret. After which he hands the captain a photograph of his sister, saying that, according to his assumption, Roger is connected with her abduction and asks to check it. After looking at the photo, Winston says that, apparently, everything is not so simple with his sister and hands him a tablet with video footage from CCTV cameras. At first I also suspected Commander Roger, but after a while I realized that this was not his doing. The commander assumes that his sister was kidnapped by an unknown organization, and Michael realizes that in his past life there were no other shelters or any secret organizations. The main character remembers that while he was unconscious, He did not feel someone else's presence. But who in this case was this woman, and why did she need to kidnap Sylvia? I noticed the main character's concern. Winston tries to cheer him up by saying that everything will be fine with his sister. I won't necessarily help her. I swear that for the rest of my life I will help you in any endeavor and will definitely find your missing sister. Honestly, Michael, I had a plan to defeat Roger even without the genetic weapon, and I want you to take a look at it. Commander Winston hands the main character a small black box inside of which there is a black cube. By waving 2 fingers, the cube begins to turn into incomprehensible clots of energy and cover the old man's hand. A few moments later, his body, and in particular his left arm, is enveloped in a black substance that resembles armor. In the history of mankind, countless myths and legends have created many rumors about those who are commonly called gods who created this world. Evidence left behind such as these relics is proof of the existence of a higher power, and they have mysterious powers. After people reached the peak of their development, they learned about hidden places on this planet called ancient ruins. The small cube that I have with me is a relic of the ancient civilization, the armor of the heavenly god. Michael is very surprised that myths and legends are not fiction and decides to ask if Winston knows where the ancient ruins are. The commander replies that he was appointed to his position more than 40 years ago, and his main motive is to protect this secret. He says that he only has one relic at his disposal, but with their current technology it is difficult to mine them without resolving the ancient ruins. Michael remembers that in his past life, the commander had to get to the 2nd floor of the ancient ruins to defeat Roger. Young man, I hope that you can help increase the rate of mining of the ruins and speed up the opening of the 2nd floor, and as a reward you can choose any relic available there. The main character thanks the old man for his help, clarifying that he needs help in finding his sister. Winston gives his consent and also wants to discuss ideas and directions in the construction of a shelter. I hope for the help of our protagonist. Having finished the negotiations, Michael leaves the commander's office, and Scott is waiting for him at the exit, asking how it all went. On the way to the living quarters, he says that the meeting went well and in the future everything will only get better. Commander Winston spent the whole night in his office, pondering the information received from Michael, and solving organizational issues. Already in the morning, he decides to contact Professor Bruce to convey to him the information he has received about a powerful weapon. While the professor explains that he is busy with research, which was prompted by a young man he recently met, Winston says that he also received some information from him. They are both surprised that one young guy had such a strong influence on the course of their common confrontation in the fight against the apocalypse. Bruce says that he never could have thought that 2 old men who are almost 200 years old would be helped by some young guy and forced to move forward. Winston suggests that Michael's appearance in their hideout is not just a coincidence, and that perhaps he will be a new hope for them. Our main character is met by Megan and Lena, who are happy to see him, and that he is fine. Megan says that after she was captured, Commander Winston immediately sent several people after her who managed to save her, after which our heroes understand that the situation is gradually getting better. They go to the dining room to have a little snack. Meanwhile, Commander Roger is beside himself with rage, realizing that Michael, whom he sent to kill his people, has come to the shelter. In a fit of rage, he orders to continue recruiting the awakened and intensify the training of their special unit. Assuming that Commander Winston is trying to strengthen his position, he is in no way going to give in to him. In the evening of the same day, 2 sentries located on the walls of the shelter replace each other at the observation post. While one of the military men is looking at the surroundings with binoculars, the second one reassures him by saying that there has been no danger for several weeks and there is nothing to worry about. Suddenly the man notices a huge crowd of zombies moving straight towards them, and the alarm is raised throughout the entire shelter. All people are informed that a large group of infected people has appeared 15 kilometers from them and is moving towards their base, and according to rough estimates, there are more than 10,000 individuals there. This cannot be. Our base is still under construction, and we are completely unable to cope with so many enemies. Winston immediately contacts Commander Roger, who says that he is aware of the situation and if they do nothing, the walls will be destroyed. He also says that his awakened squad is the only one who is able to repel so many infected, and he has one condition. Roger asks in return that Winston transfer all his military powers to him and resign. In a fit of rage from the commander, Winston does not understand how, in such a hopeless situation, when the lives of other people are at stake, Roger cares about gaining power and authority. My dear friend, I told you long ago that in extreme situations, only with absolute power can you rule like a king. Winston does not understand what to do in such a hopeless situation, when the lives of tens of thousands of people are at stake. The commander gives his consent, after which the cattle immediately begin to try to stop him, saying that under no circumstances should power be transferred into the hands of Roger. We have no choice but to ask him for help. I cannot seek gain when the lives of my people are at stake. At this very time, Roger orders all their forces to be transferred to the front line to fight the zombies, and also immediately begin to mobilize their awakened squad, because he does not want his shelter to be damaged. Meanwhile, panic and rumors begin to reign among the military about what is happening behind the walls of the shelter. Commander Winston comes down to the people, asks for silence, and reports that a huge horde of infected is moving towards them. He asks people to remain calm because they should not be afraid and let everyone be ready to defend this place at the cost of their own lives. Right now, more than half of the shelter's forces will be sent to the front along with Commander Roger's vanguard to protect all humanity. The old man gives a fiery speech, trying to raise his morale and inspire the soldiers to protect all those remnants of people for whose sake all this was started. But everything is going much better. Meanwhile, the military, using helicopters, observes a huge cluster of mutants moving towards the shelter. Using military equipment located around the perimeter, as well as bombs, they try to stop the moving horde. Unfortunately, this turns out to be not enough, and although they manage to thin out the ranks of mutants, the main forces of zombies are moving towards the shelter. I begin to transfer military equipment towards the base. A detachment of awakened people of Commander Roger arrives at the front line. The man at the head of their squad declares that after much training they are finally ready to fight in real life. Awakened people can easily fight back against ordinary low-ranking zombies. This picture instills confidence and optimism in ordinary military personnel, who hope that the power of superhumans will help them cope with this threat. Among the awakened, morale begins to rise, and they are confident in their abilities, saying that dealing with mutants is as easy as crushing ants. At the same second, one of the warriors of the squad is trying to warn his friend of the danger approaching him. Without having time to react, his body is cut into two parts in an instant by a very powerful and dangerous enemy. Behind him is a mutated awakened zombie with truly incredible strength. The squad commander says that they have about 200 people, which is enough to cope with ordinary zombies, but the awakened ones outnumber them and at this rate they will lose. At this time, on the walls of the shelter, commanders watch the battle unfold. Commander Roger is informed that 50 people from his squad have already died and he orders them to immediately retreat. Old man Winston, we cannot afford to sacrifice the awakened for nothing and must give them the opportunity to regroup. The two captains are also informed that due to the sudden attack, the amount of military supplies is running out very quickly and there is still about half of the available weapons left. Commander Winston orders the creation of a team and the restoration of mines in front of the shelter, as well as the order to take civilians to a bomb shelter if something happens. He distributes the assignment among his subordinates, ordering them to manage their defense points and not allow the slightest mistake. Looking at this, Roger understands that even in an emergency, his colleague is able to issue tasks in an organized manner, and he truly deserves respect. After half an hour of preparatory work, a wave of zombies reaches the last line of defense, which contains mortar guns and traps on the way to the shelter. Roger says that his power is not enough for them to fight for a long time, and they have no choice but to admit defeat. He asks you to stop showing off and follow him because if he and the other awakened ones unite, they will still be able to fight back. There is nothing we can do about this situation, and if we continue like this we will all end up finished off. Scott, realizing that the situation is becoming hopeless, wants to take Commander Winston to a bomb shelter because it is becoming too dangerous on the front line. An entire crowd of infected. The protagonist jumps from the walls of the shelter and in flight, his faithful familiar Goldie transforms into a colossal beast, taking on his true form. At this time, all the people present on the walls are surprised by the behavior of the young man, considering him a complete madman who just jumped off the high walls and is now just going to die. A powerful and colossal column of fire flares up in front of their faces, the air soaring up in front of their faces. They look up and see Michael riding Goldie, not understanding where this lion-like creature came from right under their noses. Looking at everything that is happening, Commander Winston catches himself thinking that Michael will actually be able to defeat the zombie horde alone. Our protagonist, without wasting a second, goes on the attack to the front line, demolishing everything in his path. He splits up with his familiar, who begins to hold back most of the low-ranking infected while our main character is busy clearing out the stronger individuals. Michael catches himself thinking that from a close distance the wave of zombies looks simply monstrous, and in his previous life he had never been so close to the epicenter of the battle. As I make my way through the crowd of mutants, an advanced specialized infected with the skills of a snake stands in his way. Dodging this monster, he understands why the squad of awakened ones suffered a crushing defeat. Because among the crowd of low-ranking mutants there are truly powerful opponents. Trying to attack an advanced zombie snake, his katana simply breaks on his thick and impenetrable skin. Our main character tries to regroup and retreat for a second, dodging attacks and thinking about a new plan of action. Realizing that conventional weapons can in no way harm advanced zombies, he decides that it is necessary to use supernatural abilities. His body is covered in a powerful purple aura and he charges forward, with the evolution tree informing him that he has already killed over 800 infected. The technique that our main character used bears fruit. He manages to defeat the zombie snake, as well as absorb 1% of his skills. Michael is well aware that he has dealt with only 1,000 mutants, and there is still a very long battle ahead of him. He continues to chop the flesh of the dead with even more heart, as if he were chopping vegetables for a salad. In the heat of battle, he thinks that activating the devouring ability with his bare hands is quite inconvenient, and it would be nice to come up with another way. He suggests that it is possible to activate the ability to consume energy by transferring part of one's powers into the weapon. His katanas become covered with a bright purple glow, and with their help he begins to take off his clothes from the hordes of zombies. His theory turns out to be correct and this experiment bears fruit, but ordinary weapons are not able to withstand the full force of devouring abilities and katanas very quickly become unusable. At this time, Goldie, using powerful area attacks in the form of fire breath, deals with most of the ordinary low-ranking mutants. The captains, watching everything that is happening from the walls of the shelter, cannot believe their eyes, because our protagonist single-handedly manages to stop the wave of zombies. Looking around, Commander Winston notices that thanks to Michael's actions, morale has greatly increased among ordinary military personnel. He also orders SCOTUS to gather all the awakened people under his command as soon as possible and bring them here. This young guy just arrived at the shelter and immediately jumped into action, and we can't just sit on the sidelines and watch all this. Looking at this, Roger is indignant, thinking that all this time his old friend was simply hiding such a powerful weapon in his subordination. At this moment, Goldie's body begins to be covered with a bright scarlet flame, emitting incredible power and heat. Looking back at his familiar, Michael realizes that things are bad because he had to use this form to cope with a large number of infected. Gathering a huge amount of faithful energy inside its mouth, the dog shoots a powerful beam of flame, burning everything in its path. The commanders, watching everything that is happening from the walls of the shelter, are amazed at such a destructive force that even rocket artillery is not capable of. After such a crushing and powerful attack, Goldie, having spent all her strength, returns to her original form and can barely stand on her feet. Looking at the scorched earth, Michael notices that the genetic nuclei of zombies, which were destroyed by his dog, are scattered throughout the area. The body of the little familiar immediately begins to absorb all the cores and absorbs a huge amount of energy. Having absorbed such a colossal number of nuclei, his body wraps itself in a cocoon, and Michael realizes that he is beginning to evolve. In this case, the energy released during evolution attracts all zombies nearby, and the evolution itself leaves the body too vulnerable to attack. The main character immediately rushes to the attack, protecting the body of his partner, realizing that his strength is irreplaceable and he will evolve into an E-class, which will significantly increase his strength. Michael does not spare himself in trying to protect Goldie, realizing that this is the very first wave and the subsequent ones will be much more terrible, and the help of such a powerful partner will always come in handy. Having killed most of the low-ranking infected, only the awakened ones remained in front of him, but if the main character continues to fight, his psychological state may collapse. He remembers that in his previous life he put all his strength into the last battle and died in the process. But this time everything is different, and it is too important for him to protect what he wants. Michael, realizing with all his might that he cannot give up right now, continues to protect the body of his faithful partner, fighting to the end. In the heat of battle, he is suddenly attacked from behind by the hand of a monster, but a cobblestone that comes out of nowhere saves his life. Behind him is a squad of awakened ones led by Megan, who threw this cobblestone with the power of her telekinesis. The girl says that they all came to his aid because they, too, are ready to give their lives to protect the shelter. Also having time to observe how the battle was progressing, she managed to take with her several swords that will help our protagonist in the battle. Observing everything that is happening, Commander Winston looks around trying to tell Roger that the tide of the battle is changing in their favor. Realizing that Commander Roger has disappeared somewhere, he is called out by a soldier reporting that someone left the shelter by helicopter and took with him a powerful weapon from the warehouse. On the front line, Michael asks all the awakened to be as careful as possible and distribute their forces in such a way as to build a line of defense guarding the cocoon with his familiar. A squad of awakened ones, without sparing themselves, rushes into the attack together with our main character, protecting all of humanity at the cost of their own lives. People who have defensive abilities such as strengthening their bodies remain on defense while guarding Goldie. Other awakened ones with more powerful and destructive skills rush into the attack, helping to exterminate the evil spirits. Some serve as assistants using healing skills or enhancing physical or magical skills. The commander's subordinates are already so familiar with their abilities that they can easily work as a team. Megan, I ask you to stay here with everyone and protect Goldie at all costs while I go ahead. The girl is very worried about the exhaustion of the main character, but he tries to calm her down by saying that now it is not important, and every second can be decisive. At this moment, one man begins to strengthen Michael, calling him a hero and saying that if he had not appeared in the shelter, they would all have died a long time ago. The protagonist immediately rushes into battle, thinking about the fact that before he could look back, he had already become a hero for other people. Meanwhile, the awakened fighters in the front ranks face huge zombies and try to call for reinforcements. They are shaking in fear, expecting a quick death, but the main character, rushing to their aid, saves them at the last moment. Using his incredible speed and strength, he cuts the body of an infected giant zombie in half in one motion. He asks people to regroup with their team and not get lost alone by concentrating their firepower and helping other people. Michael also understands that his psychological state will not last too long, and he needs to finish everything as soon as possible, while the enhancement is affecting him. With incredible speed, he begins to deal with crowds of ordinary infected using the blade of his swords like a real chef. He deals with more serious large opponents using his absorption skill, draining their strength as well as their abilities. At this time, a squad of survivors protecting Goldie's evolution continues to repel the attacks of the mutants attacking them. Commander Winston notices a combat helicopter flying past the walls of the shelter. Using a walkie-talkie, he immediately contacts Commander Roger, asking him to immediately stop and return to base. Looks like you already guessed what I'm going to do. You can't stay alive if he doesn't die, and I'll do it with my own hands. Roger, stop right now. I can ignore what you've done in the past, but do you have any idea what you're going to do? Old Winston, listen to me, don't act rashly. I will ask Michael for forgiveness on your behalf. If you apologize, everything will be fine. Commander Winston is asked to resolve this situation peacefully to avoid something irreversible and irreparable happening. Roger begins to scream in rage, saying that he cannot just let this brat survive and demands that command of the entire shelter be immediately transferred to him. He understands that there are not so few zombies left, and the main character is now very exhausted and weak, and all he needs to do is destroy them. At this time, panic also begins to reign on the battlefield, as all the survivors from the awakened squad do not understand who sent the helicopter. One of the men with the ability of incredible vision says that Commander Roger is on the helicopter. At this moment, a huge number of missiles fly out of the helicopter, moving in the direction of our protagonist. Megan, using the power of her telekinesis, tries to stop the swarm, but with her current strength, she cannot control things that move at such a breakneck speed. An explosion of incredible power occurs, which is visible even from the walls of the shelter. The survivors cannot believe that Commander Roger just killed the hero of the shelter, and also for what purpose he did it. One among the people is despair, and they decide that it's all over because the rest of them will not be able to defeat the awakened zombies. The girl standing in front of the wall of flame does not believe that Michael just died, screaming into the air that his sister is still alive and waiting for help. Commander Roger at this moment declares that the young man died heroically in battle and they should not lose their morale and continue to defend the shelter. Let me command the battle because thanks to me the dawn of victory will come very soon. At this moment, declaring that the commander himself attacked the main character and Winston cannot just turn a blind eye to this. Megan asks all survivors not to believe Roger's words, saying that he deliberately attacked Michael. Someone from the group of awakened ones says that they don't have time to sort things out because they are in the thick of it, and they need to think about how to survive. At the same time, from behind the wall of fire, some awakened mutants appear, who are able to survive the explosion and are still moving towards the walls, after which they immediately fall face down into the ground, and behind them our main character appears with a calm and terrifying look. After I found out that it was not you who kidnapped my sister, I wanted to forgive you if you worked together with Commander Winston, but you used the lives of innocent people in the shelter to threaten the commander into handing over his military powers. Listening to his speech, Commander Roger cannot believe his eyes, not understanding how he managed to survive after such a sudden and powerful attack. Now that the situation is not in your favor, you tried to eliminate me at the cost of the lives of other people. Ignoring the zombies attacking him, Michael continues to read his speech while fighting off all evil spirits. He makes several light swings of his katana, and not a trace remains of the infected standing next to him. Roger tries to command his subordinates to kill our protagonist, but none of the survivors dare to attack him. The commander begins to fire at the main character with a rapid-fire machine gun, trying to personally deal with him. Michael flies into the air trying to get to the helicopter while simultaneously fighting off all the bullets flying at him with his blade. A moment later, he finds himself behind Roger, who immediately begins to beg him for mercy, saying that if he spares him, he will appoint him deputy commander of the shelter. Don't follow Winston, because everything he promised you, I doubled, everything he has will become mine, and if you are a smart person, you know what the right choice is. After which the helicopter begins to fall, and pitiful cries with requests for help are heard from its cabin. A few seconds later, the main character lands on the ground, and his entire katana is covered in human blood. The main character thanks Megan for saving him and being with him on the front line all this time. He explains that thanks to that short pause when she slowed down the missiles with her power, he managed to hide behind the bodies of 2 advanced zombies. After which, thanks to her power, she continued to heal him and only thanks to this he survived. The protagonist also adds that it is too early to let down our guard because the battle is still not over. Listen to me, time is running out, and I won't waste time on all sorts of trifles. Commander Roger has been sacrificed and from now on, Winston is in command of all the survivors and the shelter. This man-made fortress is the only refuge of humanity and our home, and the crowd of zombies remaining after their battle is a small handful compared to the original wave. There are only a little more than 1,000 zombies left, most of whom have awakened, and although there are much fewer of them, we must definitely cope. Our only advantage is Goldie, and I will spend all my strength to win him at least a few more minutes of time. After such an inspiring and fiery speech, all the survivors immediately rush to the aid of the main character, defending the cocoon with all their might. Michael goes ahead to fight the awakened while a group of survivors try to buy time. The main character, having much greater potential for combat skills, begins to destroy more powerful enemies by fighting them alone. If a wave of zombies breaks through my Goldie line of defense, and the entire shelter will come to an end. In the heat of battle, the protagonist's weapon cannot withstand such powerful pressure, and once again breaks into many fragments. Trying at the same moment to come up with a plan on how to continue the battle, a new blade flies behind him at breakneck speed with the help of telekinesis. He immediately catches him in flight, and in the blink of an eye destroys the 2 awakened mutants standing in front of him. Michael realizes that Megan helped him and hurries to thank her, but at the same time, underground at breakneck speed, someone is moving in their direction. A survivor with the power of stone and fortification asks for this to be given to him, and tries to stop the underground enemy with his strength. For a few seconds everything calms down, and they are happy that their friend managed to stop the attack, and it was simply incredible. But a moment later, the mouth of a huge mutated beast appears from under the ground and swallows the cocoon with Goldie. All the survivors observing the situation realize that Goldie has just been consumed and the situation is becoming very dire. The huge body of the zombie beast begins to exude a colossal amount of energy, becoming covered in a shining golden aura, after which 2 huge wings, which Michael's faithful familiar once possessed, grow from his body. The protagonist is immediately seized with fear because in his thoughts he is wondering whether Goldie has just been absorbed and that his strength can no longer be counted on. He plunges into despair, not understanding how he allowed this to happen, and is once again faced with the fact that he is losing someone who is very near and dear to him. His thoughts are interrupted by a powerful explosion that echoes throughout the entire area, leaving only a huge column of dust. When the smoke clears, a huge golden dog with shining red eyes and black wings appears. Megan and everyone present smile and are happy that their baby has woken up and is still alive. Michael is glad that his partner is still with him and immediately jumps on his back, realizing that he has fulfilled all the conditions for evolution. He asks everyone to stay in place because they have practically exhausted their reserves of strength, and asks them to leave the rest to him. His faithful familiar has evolved to E-class, so should be able to defeat all remaining mutants. Once near the infected, Goldie begins to concentrate a huge amount of energy in its mouth, intending to attack opponents. After a few seconds, he spews out a huge stream of fire, destroying everything in its path. Turning back, Michael notices that another crowd of evil spirits has crept up on them from behind and is trying to warn his partner about the danger. A huge zombie with a bull mutation, possessing very high strength and protection, grabs Goldie by the tail. The dog immediately manages to react and, turning his head 180 degrees, attacks the offender with a powerful energy beam. The enraged bull immediately rushes to attack, but Goldie manages to block his attack by grabbing him by the horns, after which he throws the bull to the ground and soars into the air with the help of his giant wings. While in the air, it begins to accumulate a large amount of energy and all survivors immediately rush away, realizing that there will be a powerful attack. Goldie fires a huge beam of fiery energy onto the ground, destroying everything within a radius of several hundred meters. People looking at the huge wall of flame understand that if they had delayed even a few seconds longer, all that would have been left of them would have been ashes. Scott, together with Commander Winston, watching from the walls, rejoices, realizing that their main ally Michael turned out to be a very reliable and first-class warrior. "Thanks for your hard work, buddy. You've dealt with a lot of monsters, so you can head down to Earth." At the same moment, Goldie manages to react to the sharp spears of energy flying at him and manages to dodge. The survivors on the ground also manage to notice strange rays of light that were released in the direction of the main character. Michael looks around trying to see the remaining surviving infected as he no longer feels the presence of monsters. From the dissipating fog, an E-class zombie appears with a bat mutation whose attacks contain powerful poison. At the same moment, one of the awakened squad comes to the aid of the main character, says that there is only one zombie left, and invites Michael to rest and leave all the work to him. The protagonist tries to stop the naive man by telling him not to come closer to this person because she is different from ordinary zombies. The man assumes that this usually low-ranking infected person does not have time to take even a few breaths before his body is torn into several small parts. All survivors are in shock, realizing that their friend was just destroyed in 1 second and they are paralyzed by fear. Everyone step back immediately. She is on a completely different level. If you get too close you will just die. "Goldie, this applies to you too. You were poisoned with a strong poison. If you strain, it will begin to act faster, and this should under no circumstances be allowed to happen." Megan tries to stop Michael, saying that going alone and fighting such a powerful opponent is pure suicide. The main character explains that it is useless, and if they go with him, they will simply be a burden. After these words, he immediately rushes into battle, hoping that his absorption ability will help him deal with such a powerful opponent. In his current state, being almost on the verge of exhaustion, he still tries to attack the infected individual head-on, but it blocks the attack without any problems. E-class zombies have very powerful defense, and after blocking it immediately counterattacks our protagonist. Trying to defend myself from her furious and powerful attacks, the main character catches himself thinking that his consciousness begins to gradually turn off and his eyes simply close on their own. At one point, mutated zombies grab the main character by the neck, intending to tear him into small pieces. Michael decides that this is the right moment to activate his ability, and, grabbing the zombie by the hand, tries to suck all the energy out of it. The infected immediately understand the danger of this ability, and throws the main character's body in the opposite direction. The evolution tree informs Michael that since the target is too strong to activate the absorption, it is necessary to maintain the ability for 1 minute. The protagonist turns out to be dissatisfied with this set of circumstances, realizing that after the zombie saw his trump card, his defense would increase several times. Realizing that there is no way out of this situation, he continues to rush into the attack, trying to come up with a more cunning plan on the fly. Michael decides to limit her mobility to buy time to activate his ability while trying to attack her. The zombie girl, continuing to avoid direct confrontation, activates her ability to release a huge swarm of bats from her body. These small animals begin to scatter throughout the area, covering a huge area around the battlefield. All the survivors left behind the main character begin to fight off a huge flock of bats. Michael realizes that thanks to these creatures, she absorbs energy from all living beings at an incredible rate. He immediately rushes to the attack, realizing that he cannot give her much time to replenish her strength, because in this case he will 100% lose in this battle. He understands that he is superior to her in physical strength, and he just needs to find a gap in her defenses and put all his strength into one blow that will turn the tide of the battle in his favor. He rushes into the attack, activating his devouring ability and putting it into the blade in his hand. Survivors watching the battle manage to notice that the bats have stopped moving and the course of the battle has most likely changed. The zombie girl managed to block Michael's attack and his blade only slightly scratched the skin on her face. At the last moment before the attack, she managed to use all her bats as a human shield to block such a powerful attack, after which the mutant immediately counterattacks the main character, who is trying with all his might to defend himself from an enemy superior in strength. Using his speed and stealth skills, he tries to find a weak point in his opponent's defense and attack him in the back. The zombie girl also successfully parries this attack, and she and the main character continue to exchange a series of blows. During the battle, Michael begins to think that the limiting factor in his battle is the fear of death and the fact that before this he never tried to be careful and put everything on the line. He begins to think that he remains as useless as in his previous life, despite the fact that he now has access to the incredible power of the Tree of Evolution. At that same second, something very strange happens and he manages to turn the tide of the battle by grabbing the mutant and very powerfully throwing her to the ground. Raising our heads, we see how Michael's consciousness has evaporated somewhere, and his eyes lit up with a bright blue light, and blue cracks are visible all over his face. In an instant, his body begins to be overwhelmed by frantic power, and he grabs the zombie girl by the two huge wings protruding from her body. Having pressed her to the ground with his foot, he mercilessly tears these wings out of her body, and a frantic scream, saturated with pain and horror, is heard throughout the area. The Tree of Evolution seems to begin to talk to the consciousness of the main character, telling him to evolve and never stop. At this time, Michael's consciousness comes to his senses, and he tries to understand where he is, because a second ago he was on the battlefield and fought with a powerful enemy. Opening his eyes, he sees a huge shining blue tree in front of him, and tries to realize what it is, and in what place he finds himself. A blue spirit of evolution appears from the branches of the tree, which says that the protagonist's mind has fallen apart, and under no circumstances should he fail and continue to evolve. Michael does not understand what we are talking about, and how exactly he should continue to develop, and what exactly the tree wants from him. The spirit continues to repeat the same thing, says that now his mind is in danger, and begins to emit blue tree roots. The main character's body begins to become entangled in the roots of the Tree of Evolution, taking his body and mind under its own control. At this time, the monster girl, screaming in pain, rushes to attack our protagonist, promising to tear him into pieces. Michael's body, apparently controlled by the Tree of Evolution, repels the attacker without any difficulty. He continues to furiously attack the infected mutant, and no emotion appears on his face, as if he were not human. In an instant, the zombie manages to attack the protagonist with sharp energy spears, poisoning his body. At this moment, Megan notices that the main character is left without a weapon. Using her strength, she is trying to give him a katana lying nearby. Michael, with a calm look, manages to catch the flying blade in flight, after which he calmly removes sharp thorns from his body. The mutant girl assumes that her opponent must have suffered greatly from this attack, but somehow still continues to push her back. What happens there is due to the fact that the green energy accumulated when devouring abilities was used to heal the body of the main character. The zombie girl is trying to hold back the powerful pressure, but the main character is told that this is simply dishonest. She feels a strange inhuman energy from him that she simply cannot compare with. The infected understands that she needs to escape from him as quickly as possible and hide because she will not be able to emerge victorious from this fight. But the main character is not going to let his opponent go just like that, and the lightning attack manages to pin one of her hands to a nearby rock. Using the katana in the opposite hand, he accumulates a sufficient amount of energy, and is going to pin the second hand. At this time, the survivors realize that all this time Megan has been helping the main character by enhancing his weapon attacks. But the girl also understands that something strange is happening because her body moved as if someone was controlling her, and she felt an invisible force. Looking back at Goldie, Megan realizes that our protagonist's familiar also feels some strange and unknown force. All these facts lead them to believe that something very strange and inexplicable is happening to Michael. The main character, using his katana, immobilizes the second hand of the infected zombie to the rock and grabs her head with his free hand, not allowing her to utter a sound. After which, with a straight face, he begins to activate his absorption ability, and the evolution tree counts down. The survivors watching everything that happens, as well as Captain Winston, freeze in anticipation of the end of this battle. The evolution tree informs us that the absorption has been completed and the ability vampirism has been unlocked. And for killing an E-rank zombie you have received 500 evolution points and a mysterious energy sphere. In the hands of the main character, all that was left was the torso of the once harmless girl, dried to the last drop. The night gradually gives way to dawn, and Michael, standing over the defeated enemy, gradually begins to regain consciousness. Having managed to open his eyes for a moment, he immediately begins to fall to the ground because he is still not ready to accept the current state of affairs. A few seconds later, his consciousness again finds itself in an incomprehensible place, and he tries to remember everything that happened to him over the past few hours. At some point, a voice calls out to him, and turning around, he sees his younger sister Sylvia in front of him. He immediately tries to start talking to the girl, and also to come closer to her, but his legs are enveloped by the roots of the tree, preventing him from moving further. Sylvia asks her brother for forgiveness, and says that she cannot go with him yet. I ask you, don't go, don't leave me alone, at least tell me where you are, and I'll immediately rush to your aid. Sorry, but I can't, the current you is not strong enough and must become much stronger, and I will wait for you. After these words, Michael immediately regains consciousness and, looking around, realizes that he is in a hospital room. You remember that the battle with the zombie horde was successful. He sets a new goal to find the very person who kidnapped his sister and deal with the evolution tree. He immediately transfers his consciousness to the tree temple from which his path to becoming a hero began. After a long time of analyzing the trophies obtained during the battle, he finally finished distributing his skills. He sees 3 new types of alerts in front of him. The first is a murder, because a crowd of zombies allowed him to gain more than 10,000 evolution points. The second is the ability to devour, which at some points can take quite a long time and informs about a large number of abilities. The third is a treasure, because killing a rare monster gives a certain chance to get a rare source of energy, which in this case was obtained after killing an E-rank zombie. The Tree of Evolution offers to open the energy sphere, and after agreeing, he receives a fragment of a universal ability that can replenish 20% of any skill. This is a very unexpected gain, and this way I can collect and accumulate abilities faster. Initially, the main character assumed that he would be able to develop to E-rank, but the absorbed gene core has several garbage substances that will be removed. Looking at the indicators of his body, he understands that strength, speed and detection are at the 5th level, and intelligence is at the 3rd, and to increase the first 3, 1,000 evolution points are needed. The system invites him to perform a reactive gene process and spend all the accumulated points. But Michael decides to remain at his current level for now until he evolves to C rank. Strength and agility are important for battle, so I will first raise them to the 6th level. Mental spirit also cannot be neglected, There are problems in the horde of instant spirit monsters, so the remaining points can be spent on improving mental spirit. After successfully distributing the upgrade points he has accumulated, the main character decides to go out onto the balcony of his room and admire the sunset. He is interrupted by Megan, who asks how long ago he regained consciousness and what he is doing here. The girl says that now for all the survivors of the shelter he is a real hero, and some even call him the god of war. Michael says that he is not worthy of such a title because he could not even protect his little sister, and he does not have the qualifications to become a real hero. The girl says that the main character was unconscious for 3 days, and every morning Commander Winston came to visit him in the hope that you would regain consciousness as soon as possible. Looking at Michael's thoughtful face, Megan assumes that he wants to leave the walls of the shelter and decides to ask him about it directly, after which she receives an approving answer, which marks the beginning of a new chapter. Before setting off, Michael decides to look at the commander, who is very glad that he has regained consciousness and is fine. They both sit down, and the old man wonders if the protagonist's body has completely returned to normal and stopped after the injuries he received. Commander Winston, I'm here to ask you about what happened today. How is the genetic medicine research going? When you were in a coma, I went to the research laboratory. The creation of genetic medicine is almost completed. We are preparing for injections into people. Michael smiles because he is very pleased with this news, and he says that in this situation he can safely leave the walls of the shelter. Winston can't believe his ears and asks our protagonist why he decided to leave them and for what purpose. You should know why I came here. Now what I wanted to do here is ready. I need to go in search of my younger sister. I approve of your decision, young man, so tell me everything you need for your further journey, and what help you need. I will go to the central areas of the city and conduct an investigation there to find evidence of the disappearance of my younger sister, because the appearance of a horde of zombies may be connected with this. Winston says that the city center has become a desert since the apocalypse began, and no one even dares to go in that direction. Michael asks him not to worry because he knows perfectly well what he is doing, and there is nothing more important in his life than the task at hand. The commander understands that he won't be able to just stop the main character, and doesn't even try to convince him. He asks him to wait for a while and contacts the research laboratory by phone. After 15 minutes of waiting, he receives a call, and Winston asks Michael to go with him to one place because he wants to show him something. The research laboratory is an amazing place. After you fought a horde of zombies, I ordered Bruce to make a special weapon for you. Moving along the corridors towards the laboratory, Michael says that as soon as he receives the weapon, he will immediately leave the walls of the shelter. Through transparent windows, he watches as awakened people in the courtyard arrange competitive sparring to determine the level of strength. Some of the survivors will be assigned to the shield team. They must ensure the safety of the shelter, stay and guard the base. The second type of people will be a team of hunters in which there will be many different units responsible for clearing zombies from nearby areas and collecting various supplies. The third type will be a team of super warriors, which will consist of the most unique people who are capable of fighting a horde of zombies and have high fighting qualities. Michael cannot believe that Commander Winston will have time to prepare such a detailed plan to protect the survivors in such a short time. At the same moment, all the awakened people gathered on the street notice our main character through the windows of the building and begin chanting his name, calling him a hero. The protagonist tries to justify himself by saying that he once again does not like this attitude towards himself, and he is just the same as an ordinary survivor. After some time, they reach a secret elevator, which takes them down to the lower underground floors where the laboratory is located. You saved everyone, I'm not exaggerating. Without you the shelter would have been destroyed and your departure would be a serious blow for us. Michael already wants to start making excuses, but the old man hits him on the back and says that he is just joking and understands perfectly well the situation he is in. Finding himself at the huge and fortified walls of the laboratory, he asks Bruce to open the gate since they have arrived to receive new weapons. At the entrance they are met by a professor who asks them to quickly follow him because he still has a lot of work to do and time is limited. Bruce opens a huge armored capsule containing a small cube and he says that it is metal with a memory effect and is modeled after the armor of the heavenly god. He gives it to Michael and asks him to test it, and he, in turn, agrees and begins to pour part of his power into the metal. The mysterious cube quickly begins to absorb energy, and takes the form of two incredibly sharp and durable daggers. Bruce says that thanks to Winston's observation, he combined the fighting method and combined it with the heavenly god armor to create a similar material. Its initial state can change into the form you want. Try to put your ability there. Michael again tries to transform the metal and the blades turn into a ring enveloping his index finger. For now I'm considering this as a weapon. When the second layer of ruins is opened I'll let you choose a new one. Michael thanks the professor, saying that he is immensely happy about such a generous gift, and then hurries to leave the laboratory as soon as possible. Finally, Michael asks Winston where his partner Goldie is now, and he replies that he saw him in the company of Lena. After these words, Michael hurries to leave the walls of the shelter as quickly as possible, and the professor asks his friend if he is worried about the young man. Until now, I didn't believe that this guy would really cope with more than 10,000 zombies and suspected that he would replace not only Roger but also me and would use the resources of the shelter. Collecting all his things, Michael visits Lena thanks to her concern for Goldie, and the girl asks him to be careful and return back safe and sound as soon as possible. At the exit from the shelter, our protagonist is met by Megan, who does not believe that he will just leave the walls of the fortress and leave them alone. Michael says he's just not used to this, and he can't leave his sister alone waiting for her to show up. In that case, let me go with you. It is too dangerous in the city center, and perhaps I can provide you with reasonable assistance. I'm grateful to you, but it's too dangerous. I don't want you to risk your life. The shelter just experienced a zombie invasion, and you all need each other. Finally, Megan screams and asks Michael if he will come back to them, and if they can see each other in the future. The main character says with confidence on his face that he will definitely return, and they will see each other in the near future. After several hours of flight, our heroes find themselves not far from the nearby neighborhoods of the place where they were heading and observe a huge accumulation of mutated zombies there. All this time, while the main character was in a coma, some zombies managed to evolve to C rank and pose a very serious danger to him. Since the evolution tree reacts this way, and I feel a lot of energy accumulating there, I definitely need to go and check this place. Goldie at this moment does not feel any fear because he wants new adventures, as well as soon as possible to completely sort things out and return to rest. While combing one of the buildings from which a huge amount of energy emanates, he does not feel the presence of zombies. Goldie's sense of smell is stronger than mine. Maybe an infected person has really appeared who knows how to hide his smell and presence. Michael takes out his blades and asks his familiar not to rush into hasty actions because they need to be more careful and competently study the environment. Having risen to the main floor, the hero notices a white-haired man along with a little girl who calls him Big Brother and holds an apple in her hand. The man immediately notices our hero and reacts to him by coming to the defense of his sister. The main character greets the survivors, but at the same time he could not even imagine that he would meet ordinary people in such a dangerous zone where everything is teeming with awakened mutants. The man covers his sister, saying that he doesn't believe that they caught up with them so quickly and asks the girl to stay behind him. After which he rushes to attack our main character, calling the name Blake and saying that he will not surrender to him and will avenge his sister. Michael dodges the attack by saying that he clearly confused him with someone, and he doesn't know any Blake, and has no idea who he is. The unfamiliar man immediately notices his mistake and hurries to apologize as soon as possible, saying that he mistook the main character for another person. He and his sister bow and ask for forgiveness, saying that they are very sorry and did not want to cause him unnecessary trouble. Michael tells them not to worry and decides to introduce himself as quickly as possible, asking his new acquaintances to give their names. The unfamiliar man says that his name is Aaron, and then explains to his younger sister Amelie for 20 minutes what happened to them. Aaron explains that this little girl is actually his wife's sister who was raped by Blake's people and then fed to the monster. Now I only have this girl left, and I cannot allow anything to happen to her in memory of my wife. The main character is enveloped in rage, and he tries to calm Aaron down by promising that these scoundrels will definitely get what they deserve for such behavior. That's not all. Blake used people to lure zombies and feed that same monster. Michael understands that under normal conditions, if it were a zombie or an animal, they would simply start a fight. But these people are feeding the monster, and something is clearly wrong here. The insight of the protagonist tells him that something is wrong with his new acquaintance, and asks him to let him examine his hand. He discovers something resembling a plant seed on its shoulder, and assumes that the monster needs human nutrition because it is a plant type and cannot move around in search of food. Such plants have a certain camouflage or bait method, like for example a piranha deceives food by dragging it into its lair. When the virus began to spread throughout the world, most living beings became infected and turned into mindless, bloodthirsty monsters, including ordinary plants. Since monster plants were very rare, they had a source of life force in the depths of their roots and a huge gene inside their body. Because of such unique features in his past life during the apocalypse era, every time a mutated plant-type monster appeared, he would attract countless people who would fight to the death for him. Michael could never have imagined that he would meet such a monster, and he needed to destroy it as soon as possible in order to obtain a source of life force. The main character's thoughts are interrupted by Aaron, who asks if everything is okay with him, and why the main character just stands there and doesn't move. This place is not safe, they will quickly find you, and I am sure that those who are looking for you are already somewhere nearby, especially since there are seeds attached to you that give away your location. That's it, it's not surprising that every time we hide, ours very quickly finds that we urgently need to get out of here. Michael tries to reassure his new acquaintances by saying that he will definitely help them in a difficult situation and destroy all offenders. The man does not believe the words of the protagonist and the fact that he alone is capable of defeating so many enemies who have weapons and super abilities. Michael says that he also lost his little sister because he was not strong enough, but assures Aaron that he is strong enough to protect them both. The man agrees with him, realizing that if he continues to live on the run and hide from problems, nothing will change. We won't do anything, we'll just rest here and wait until they find us, because with their help it will be possible to penetrate their base. After several hours of rest, the main characters hear a crowd of people climbing the steps towards them. Looking at the thugs, Aaron says that Blake is not among them and that these are ordinary pawns who do dirty work. One of the bandits says that because Aaron and his sister ran away, the boss punished him very much and he is going to take revenge for this. After these words, he runs up to him and begins to beat him with all his strength with his fists, using his face as a punching bag. Michael already wants to help his new friend, but he stops him, saying that he is fine and there is no need to interfere. The thugs don't understand who Michael is and decide to take him with them to the base because they will all be good as additional food. After some time, using a vehicle suitable for movement, they reach a huge stadium, shrouded in giant roots and branches. Two guards stand near one of the doors inside the building and hear someone outside the door screaming with all their might and asking for mercy. The boss likes to play around lately. He brings guys and girls and makes them watch while he has fun with her. This guy's name seems to be Austin and the boss definitely has some kind of disgusting interest in him. But in such a situation, whoever is stronger is right. Inside the room we see a guy sitting and tied to a chair, gagged, and a man getting dressed, zipping up his pants. On the bed in front of him lies a mutilated and beaten girl who has just been violated and asks Austin for forgiveness. Having finished getting dressed, the man moves towards the tied guy, asking him if he liked this performance. Why are you angry? You should be grateful to your girlfriend because if it weren't for her you would have died long ago. Blame yourself for being weak and worthless. After which he tears off a piece of tape covering Austin's mouth. They say that he is interested in listening to his thoughts after watching this spectacle. The guy immediately begins to scream at the top of his voice to such an extent that the capillaries in his eyes begin to crack, promising Blake to kill him at the first opportunity. He, in turn, immediately delivers a powerful blow to Austin's stomach, causing him to writhe in pain and stop screaming throughout the room. He starts kicking him, mocking him and telling him that he won't stop until he becomes crippled, and then uses him as bait. The girl lying on the bed asks Blake to stop, saying something that he promised to let her boyfriend go if she agrees to his request. Blake says that she turned out to be a naive fool because he has no reason to just let them go and lose valuable ingredients for the plant. At the same second, a powerful explosion occurs and a huge hole is formed in one of the walls, through which our main character enters the room. Brat, where did you come from here? You want to become a hero. But do you even know who I am and what will happen to you after such impudence? Michael is instantly behind Blake, saying that he doesn't need to know the name of the man who will die in the next few minutes. He gives the girl his jacket, asking her not to worry about anything and to find a safe place to hide. Blake immediately begins to scream at the top of his voice, telling the guards standing outside the door to immediately come inside and grab this insolent man. At the same moment, the rest of the team members appear and ask him to save his strength because they have already dealt with his henchman. Austin, who has been tied to a chair all this time, notices Michael and calls him by name, saying that he knows him. The protagonist remembers that once in elementary school he was bullied for not having parents, and Austin was the same guy who protected him all the time. Blake's body begins to change, and he clearly activates his ability, saying that after such a heartfelt meeting between his classmates, it's time for them to die. He attacks the main character with a huge mutated hand, and Michael realizes that he has the ability of the beast's claws, which at this stage is too weak. If the claws do not have a strong poison that paralyzes the nerves, then this is one of the most useless abilities. The main character, without any problems, inflicts a huge amount of damage on Blake in a few seconds, forcing him to retreat. His opponent, realizing the seriousness of the situation in which he finds himself, begins to beg for mercy and asks not to kill him. At the last moment, Austin and Aaron stop Michael and ask him to give them the opportunity to deal with him themselves. They say he should know how badly he treated them, as well as their girlfriends and wives, and they want to return the favor. Looking at them, Michael feels the presence of a small part of the potential of the awakened bodies and decides to give them the opportunity to realize it. He agrees, but asks them not to force things and beware of the poison of his sharp claws. Blake realizes that these two guys clearly want to die and he can use them as hostages to escape from here. The guys immediately begin to attack Blake using steel bats as weapons and try to overpower him. "You want to kill me, but you are just a nonentity, scum who cannot even protect their own women." Blake doesn't understand how these guys have so much confidence after what they went through. He begins to be furiously irritated by the fact that some nonentities like them are looking down on him, and he promises to destroy everyone who is here. Although Blake is very seriously injured, he still manages to resist two opponents, keeping up with the movements of each. The girl, watching all this from the side, asks the main character to help her boyfriend because they can die in the battle with this scoundrel. "I understand their pain. They hate him because they are weak and desperate to protect what they love. They are trying to atone for their guilt, and in search of change and strength they take unprecedented risks, putting their own lives at risk." The girl continues to beg the main character to help them, but he does not dare, hoping that in a critical situation they will still be able to awaken their potential. At the last moment, he still decides not to risk the lives of innocent people and rushes to attack Blake. In a moment, his body becomes very heavy, and he stops, and everything around him begins to shake and tremble. He looks at Aaron, in whom the power to control gravity has clearly awakened, although he himself does not understand what is happening. Gravity control is a B-rank ability that controls gravity and can control the gravity of any location, and its control increases depending on the user's strength. Looking at Austin's body in Blake's bestial hand, Michael realizes that something strange is happening to him too. He does not believe that both of them immediately awaken powerful abilities, and Austin simply disappeared and appeared behind the offender because he received a very rare rank A Shadow Gap ability. Shadow Gap is an ability that covers the user's body, turning them into a shadow and allowing them to change into any shape, as well as dive into objects to avoid damage. Austin says that he is not going to kill Blake just like that, he will cut him piece by piece slowly and painfully, mocking him as he did with other victims. He decides to let him feel the despair that their wives felt, and cuts out his tongue so that he cannot scream and speak, after which he doesn't stop and cuts off Blake's hand with a malicious grin, causing him to scream in pain. Michael, with a calm face, looks at how Austin mocks the body of the defeated enemy, realizing that after everything he has experienced, this is a logical result. After some time, they both stand in front of Blake's lifeless body, which simply lies on the floor and does not move. A few seconds later, Austin also falls to his knees and begins coughing up blood, trying to understand what is happening to him. Michael says that apparently Blake managed to poison him, and it also spread throughout his body. At the same moment, the building begins to shake, and Aaron grabs his friend, saying that they need to escape as soon as possible because, apparently, the monster living within these walls has awakened. "I'll stay to deal with this monster because that's the reason I came here, and you go outside because you'll only get in the way." The wounded guys, along with their sisters and girls, rush to leave the stadium as soon as possible, hoping that Michael will have enough strength to fight the monster alone. Austin notes that he has known the main character since elementary school and, although a lot of time has passed since they met, he has changed a lot. That weak look that was in his memories has completely disappeared, and in front of him stands a real mature man who you can really rely on and believe in. Meanwhile, the roots of the plant begin to penetrate every centimeter of the building, demonstrating all their monstrousness. Outside the stadium, huge roots begin to rage from side to side, and the real body of the monster is revealed. It can't be, this is the monster that Blake fed, and we lived next to him all this time. Large-sized Tyrant King Flower. In my previous life I heard about a raid against an S-rank monster. That battle was won with many casualties. The system informs Michael that at this stage of development the flower has only a D rank and its energy is very unstable. The monster says that the main character is very strong, and he, in turn, is amazed that the plant can talk and has already acquired its own consciousness. You destroyed my puppet, and now must take his place and be a source of food for my development. I'm not going to do this. If you're trying to intimidate me right now into becoming your puppet, then stop talking about this nonsense. Michael orders Goldie to stop the flower's body while he himself goes inside its torso and tries to finish it off. The protagonist activates his absorption ability, and then begins to chop up the giant vines of this flower in the hope of destroying it and absorbing its ability. The system says that the enemy's body is too large and his ability cannot be absorbed, and therefore Michael needs to destroy the plant core himself. At this time, Goldie frantically fights with the roots of the plant, trying to stop it and minimize the destructive damage. Finally, Michael asks his familiar to be careful as these vines are very poisonous inside. Why are you helping a person work with me and absorb him? I feel a huge unimaginable energy in his body. Goldie replies that no one wants to make money with an ugly plant like you and is just making fun of him. Meanwhile, the main character penetrates deep into the roots of the plant where everything is covered with mucus and there is an incredibly rotten smell. It seems that the entire center has merged with it, and this must be its internal region. The core is located somewhere nearby. Michael hears the voice of a certain girl who asks to save her because she is very hungry, and there are other survivors here. He continues to insist that she is very hungry. She rushes at him, and he sees that this is actually the mutilated body of a former person. He notices a huge number of killed people who have merged with the roots of the plant and are now its puppets. The plant states that these people were absorbed by him, and he specifically copied their appearance and voice to use for further purposes. I don't have time to look at your perverted tastes. These scenes of fights killing each other, I have seen too many times and I don't want to look at innocent people killed anymore. The monster tries to attack him with the help of his puppets, trying to awaken a feeling of pity and compassion in the main character and cripple his fighting spirit. At one point, he even uses the body of a little girl, calling the main character his brother and trying to awaken warm, loving emotions in him. Michael claims that this is not his real little sister, but he still can't just cut into pieces what was once an ordinary person. The protagonists are overcome by incredible rage and he, emitting a huge amount of energy, prepares to finish off this annoying creature. The plant grins and says that Michael wants to die as soon as possible and now it will strangle him to death with its own body. The main character activates his absorption ability by impregnating his blades with it, and starting with frantic speed to chop up all the plant roots that come to his hand. This causes incredible pain to the monster, and the main character manages to break through a huge layer of thicket to the core of the mutant. The plant is indignant and furious, not understanding how an ordinary person is so sure about where the core is located. Michael could never have imagined that such a huge monster would have such a small core resembling a human eye. He asks the monster not to be afraid of death, because in the end he is an ordinary infection that needs to be eradicated from this planet. I try to touch the core and use the absorption ability. Blue roots unexpectedly shoot out of his hand, and the main character does not understand what is happening. The tree of evolution located inside his body personally begins to absorb the remains of the plant monster. What's happening to me? Why does your human body have such a pure plant source? Who are you anyway? Michael is immediately transported to the Temple of Evolution and asks the tree why he absorbed the flower of the Tyrant King before him. Tree replies that since it is the same type of plant as himself, he can absorb its essence to obtain a purer source. Michael turns out to be quite dumbfounded that all his subordinates are evolving and developing much faster and earlier than himself. The evolution of the tree opens up a contract for the main character, which can be concluded for abilities in order to gain the abilities of other people without killing them. The essence of the ability contract equivalent to the skill level of the devouring ability can absorb ability fragments, so that the ability contract increases. Michael realizes that in addition to absorbing the skills and powers of zombies, he can now safely contact people and also gain their skills. Finally, the tree informs Michael that in the field of plant creatures there is someone much more powerful than himself. Returning back, the main character assumes that the tree was talking about exactly what is located in the very center of the city. Meanwhile, the survivors outside notice that the monster's body simply collapsed to the ground and most likely our protagonist emerged victorious from the fight. Austin asks his friend to go and check the situation, and also find out if everything is okay with Michael and in what condition he is now. Meanwhile, the main character still manages to find a source of vitality thanks to which he can be healed, as well as strengthen his current skills. At this moment, Aaron finds him with little Goldie lying in his arms, and he says that they were very worried about him. The man reports that they found a familiar lying in the ruins of a building and decided to take it with them, for which Michael thanks him. He also adds that this place is very safe and he should bring Austin here because they need to deal with his poison as soon as possible. He places Goldie's body in the source of life force, saying that he did well and needs to rest and recuperate. A few minutes later, Aaron manages to take his friend to the source and also place him inside to help him neutralize the poison. By this point, Goldie manages to restore all her strength, and Michael suggests that Aaron also dive into the source to restore his strength, as well as strengthen his current abilities. Looking at them, Michael realizes that they will need much more time to recover and decides to check something. He has collected many fragments that can be used to increase the level of the ability contract, and decides to activate it on one of the guys. He touches Austin's body, thereby activating the ability contract and trying to subjugate his power. The system informs him that the ability contract has been activated and the main character has received a new skill, shadow breaking. Michael asks his familiar to stay here and protect the source of life, while he goes on patrol to scout out the area. Now I need to collect as many ability fragments as possible and sign Austin's ability. Now I will clear the nearby areas from low-level zombies, and at the same time I will get acquainted with the ability of shadow breaking. At this stage, I can use the shadow ability within the detection zone of my penetration, which is at the 5th level, combining it with the absorption ability. Using this combination of abilities, Michael manages to receive a huge amount of evolution points at incredible speed, destroying everything in his path. Shadow Rip combined with the Devour ability is very useful when clearing out low-level zombies. Looking around, the main character senses, with the help of his insight, a strange aura that apparently clearly belongs to someone who is not infected. Somewhere on the street of one of the blocks, a zombie girl resembling a ballerina is dancing a magnificent dance, with a huge mutant standing next to her. On the shoulder of this thug sits a little girl who claps her hands and laughs. They say that the girl is very beautiful and dances well. The girl goes down to the ground to draw with crayons, when suddenly our main character appears next to her, who says that he now understands where this strange aura comes from. The giant zombie immediately rushes to attack our protagonist, but he manages to defend himself with his blade. Who are you and how did you suddenly appear here? After all, I placed a lot of puppets all over the area and would definitely have known if someone had approached. Having heard everything that was said, Michael understands that it was not in vain that he left those zombie puppets alive and was able to get here unnoticed using the shadow gap. The main character decides to ask the girl how she controls the zombies and what her name is, to which she sticks her tongue out at him and says if he doesn't apologize, Anya won't answer his question. In his memories, a girl named Anya slips through, who in a past life was an S-rank warrior and had the nickname the Black Queen. In his past life after the apocalypse, the Black Queen was the first human to be infected with the virus. But for an unknown reason, the virus damaged her body, but did not allow her to lose consciousness. Thus, Anya became a zombie with a human consciousness and had two abilities, destruction of the mental spirit and control of zombies. One side of her personality wanted to kill her, and the second tried to survive. As a result, people were divided into two camps, and some treated her as a person, and the second wanted her destruction. In the end, the Black Queen chose the role of a loner. There were rumors that she was cold-blooded and was a demon in human form. Michael asks for forgiveness, and says that he had no bad intentions and just wanted to be friends. Anya says that they already came to her, and she said that she would not be friends with them under any circumstances. You understand that someone has already come to her. Michael asks to describe these people, and after thinking a little, the girl offers to draw what they looked like. The girl draws two strange people on the ground. They say that a few days ago they came to find her, but she ran away. Anya also says that they were all dressed in black cloaks and their targets are zombies, as well as evolved animals and other holders of abilities. At the same moment, the earth begins to crack under their feet, and the main character manages to grab the little girl and save her. A huge mutated beast rushes at them from underground and Michael asks Anya to hold onto it as tightly as possible. Using a combination of my abilities, as well as incredible strength, he destroys the monster in one movement, cutting his entire body in half. Anya turns out to be very surprised by the strength of the protagonist, and begins to think that in front of her is a prince who simply shines and sparkles. Michael promises to take her to a safe place, and the girl calms down, realizing that the main character is not like those evil guys and most likely will not cause her any harm. After some time, they return to the place of the source of life where Austin and Aaron completed their recovery, and have been waiting for his return all this time. Michael says that he found this girl while he was on patrol and decided to take her with him. We have become much stronger after absorbing the source of life force, and I am also interested in the ability you just used. The ability I just used is your Shadow Rift, and I can open up the ability to borrow other people's abilities. After the explanation, Michael asks the guys to come closer to him because the situation has changed a lot and they need to plan their further actions. Michael explains to his new friends that the situation is getting complicated and staying here could be dangerous, so he invites them to go to the shelter and wait for him there. He also, understanding the seriousness of the situation, asks the guys to look after two defenseless girls while he deals with other matters. Noticing how little Anya is playing with Goldie, he decides to send his familiar along with the survivors for additional protection. Austin invites the main character to go with them and not risk his own life if it is so dangerous here. I will refuse this offer. The center may contain information about my sister, and I need to find out. Aaron gives approval to Michael and notes that since from now on he has Austin's ability, they will only be a burden for him. The protagonist also says that he will take little Anya with him since she is very unique and is temporarily not suitable for being in the shelter. Friends inform the main character that they will be waiting for him in the shelter, and ask him to return safe and sound. Little Anya says that Goldie would prefer to stay with them, but because of her humility she cannot refuse, and also wonders if she can take control of him with her own powers. Together they watch the familiar fly away along with a handful of survivors as the little girl waves goodbye to them. Michael dresses his body in a shadow cover, and Anya is surprised by his appearance, and the fact that he begins to shine at that moment. The girl does not understand why everything around her has turned black, and the main character explains that she is not in the shadow of his ability, and this way they will be able to move much faster and remain unnoticed. Michael understands that there may be a lot of unknown things in the city center, so they must be prepared for this, and decides to spend the accumulated evolution points. In total, he has more than 20,000 points at his disposal, which he spends on increasing each of the main characteristics. He decides to spend the remaining points on detection, because with the help of a shadow gap he can increase his advantage in battle. I confirm the distribution of skills. The evolution tree informs him that after leaving the menu his body will undergo changes. Such a colossal number of points releases a huge purple aura around the main character's body, which slightly scares little Anya. This situation does not cause much damage to health or the environment, but the protagonist understands that although he is still an F rank, he feels like he has reached the D rank standard. At the same time, somewhere near the city center, a small group of survivors is wandering, clearly busy with some kind of search. A guy with glasses named VJ expresses his dissatisfaction because they have been busy searching for several days and so far have not seen even a hint of the entrance to the ruins. Looking at the map, the head of their squad, a guy named Alan, says that the entrance should be somewhere very nearby. VJ says that if he is so confident in his assumptions, then it's time to check if the entrance is really somewhere nearby. He places his hand on the ground because his A-rank density ability can determine the density of a substance, change it, and control its molecular structure. While he is busy searching, A girl named Theodora asks where another member of their squad has gone, to which Alan replies that she has her own mission and can suddenly leave somewhere. At one point, VJ reports that there is indeed a large space below and perhaps a passage can be made there. Having received the approval of the coupon, he uses his ability to awaken the earth and reach the supposed entrance located below. A group of survivors standing in front of the entrance to the supposed ruins sense an ominous dark energy emanating from below. At this time, Michael and Anya both suddenly felt some strange energy and are trying to get to its source as soon as possible. Moving to the place of the supposed energy source, they stumble upon a huge B-rank monster, which is completely defeated and burned to the ground by incredible power. At the same moment, Michael suggests that, in addition to him, one of the survivors may also be looking for the entrance to the ruins, and most likely this energy comes from them, and he was clearly ahead of him. After 10 minutes of searching, our heroes manage to find the very hole made by a detachment of searchers, which leads to the entrance to the ruins. Michael begins to worry that he might be waiting for them downstairs, so he tries to warn Anya and asks her to stay outside. The girl begins to be indignant, and says that she also wants to go to the ruins with her older brother Michael, because she is very strong and can also be useful in battle. Yielding to the persuasion of little Anya, he still takes her with him, and they descend deep into the ruins, beginning to move along their dark and narrow corridors. Having reached the fork, they notice that a handful of survivors went to the right because on this side the armor of the knights was completely broken, and on the other it was not touched at all. The main character immediately draws the conclusion that the survivor clearly did not come down here alone, and the group could split up. The main character, together with Anya, decides to move in the opposite direction where the armor of the knights remained intact, and also assumes that they serve as a guard. His fears immediately come true because at that very second, the seemingly lifeless armor comes to life, saying that invaders have been discovered in the ruins and must be destroyed. Michael, deciding not to stand on ceremony and without wasting much time, uses the shadow gap technique and in a matter of seconds deals with all the soulless puppets. After the victory, little Anya finds something strange on the bodies of the defeated knights and tries to inform the main character about it. The girl takes out something interesting with her hand from the depths of the armor, saying that apparently this thing makes the knights come to life and move. She holds a small blue crystal in her hand, saying that, if her memory serves her correctly, it is called an energy core, and there is a lot of energy in this crystal. Michael upsets the girl and says that, unfortunately, they are all from the lowest rank and are completely useless, and she can throw away all those that she has already collected. Their conversation is interrupted by the eerie, ominous sound of iron grinding on the stone floor, which makes them wary. The sound continues to intensify and soon the silhouette of a huge knight appears from the depths of the dark corridors, which is on a completely different level than the previous ones. Without much ceremony, the enemy immediately tries to attack our protagonist, but the shadow skill allows him to avoid the blow. Michael realizes that he just needs to destroy his energy core, and then the knight will not be able to move. Using his shadow skills, he literally tries to tear the knight's armor from the inside with countless attacks. All this does not give a noticeable effect, and Michael assumes that the monster is protecting its crystal with all its might by moving it throughout the entire space of the armor. The high-level knight gives our protagonist no time to think and rushes back into the attack, raising his giant sword above his head for a crushing blow. The blow turns out to be so powerful that it literally splits the stone slabs located on the floor where our main character was supposed to be. Everything that happens in a few moments takes on completely different circumstances, and an incomprehensible energy projectile tears off the knight's right hand, in which his sword was located. Apparently, Michael managed to dodge and also throw an enchanted weapon at his opponent, after which he decides to use his physical skills and literally crushes the monster's iron armor with a powerful kick. These damages no longer allow the knight to move, and after the victory, inside his armor, the main character discovers an energy crystal, as well as a stone tablet. You understand that this crystal is already of at least some value. He asks Anya to keep it for herself. Then, by visual inspection, he tries to understand what use this stone plate, which looks unfinished, could have and needs to find the second part. His reasoning is interrupted by a sudden earthquake, which causes the stone slabs under their feet to move from side to side. A few minutes later, a passage opens in front of our heroes, leading down to the deeper floors of the ruins. Michael assumes that the stone slab in his hand is a guide and tells Anna that most likely they will have to go down. Going down the steps, they find themselves in front of a stone bridge leading to a small arena in the center, which houses a giant armored spider. The main character gives the girl a stone slab, ordering her to stay here and not take a single step to the side until he deals with the enemies. Noticing our protagonist, he is immediately attacked by a flock of small spiders, which are clearly controlled by the main individual in the center of the arena. Michael immediately rushes to attack them, realizing that he will definitely have to face other survivors who have descended into the ruins, and his main goal is to get as many things as possible and increase his combat power. During the battle, all his thoughts are occupied not with how strong his opponents are, but only with thoughts about who the people who managed to descend into the ruins before him are. The power of the giant spider is not enough to resist our main character, so his thoughts are occupied only with what he can do to force the evolution tree to increase its level. Realizing that at the moment this is not the most important task facing him, he tries to finish the battle with the giant spider as soon as possible and unravel the secret of the stone slab. Having finished the battle, little Anya is surprised by the strength of our protagonist, who asks not to overpraise him because he was able to win only thanks to knowledge of the enemy's weak points. As a reward after the battle, he was able to find the second part of the stone slab, as well as an intelligence crystal, which increases the indicator of this characteristic by 10%. After which he again asks the little girl to hide the crystal in her purse, and also to return the second part of the stone slab to him. As soon as Anya picks up the crystal, it immediately splits into atoms and her body is enveloped in blue flames, and she feels her intelligence begin to increase. Michael tells the girl that she unknowingly absorbed a crystal, which increased her powers and now her skills will be much stronger, and then decides to combine the parts of the stone slab. After connecting the plates, they immediately release a huge amount of energy, and a hologram of a pyramid turned upside down appears in front of them. Looking at the hologram, Michael understands that this is a map of ruins on which rewards and dangers are marked with lines and colors, and that on the 5th floor there is one of them where the most powerful opponents will be waiting. Little Anya notices that, looking at the map, it seems strange to her that there is no way to the 3rd floor where none of the corridors leads. This also seems very strange to the main character, but their conversation is immediately interrupted by an incomprehensible movement from the side of the arena on which the remains of the defeated spider monster are lying. Raising their eyes upward and looking at the map, they both notice that the downward movement of the arena is synchronized with the appearance of a passage to the 3rd floor of the ruins. Immediately after this, the hologram in the form of a pyramid begins to shrink, turning into a small star with an energy core in the very center. I'm trying to understand what this little star is. Our heroes can't find anything better than just taking it with them until it can be useful to them. Approaching the edge of the same arena that began to move down, they notice a huge staircase leading into the depths of the 3rd floor of the ruins. While our heroes are descending to the 3rd floor, a handful of survivors who found themselves in the ruins had already managed to reach the 5th and lowest floor before them. Moving along the only corridor leading to the chambers of what our researchers assume is the main boss, they try not to make noise. Looking at the mysterious stone statues that look like knights, they hope that at least they don't live at one point and they won't have to fight with them. The girl in the squad points out that this is just a pile of stones, and not a helmet and armor, and most likely they physically cannot move. Once in the main hall of the group, the researchers look around trying to find the boss of the dungeon with their eyes because they are eager to show off their skills. In the center of the hall, they see a crystal coffin suspended by golden chains from the ceiling, inside of which there is a stone slab in the shape of a circle, which is the broken divine hand that they are looking for. Inside the coffin there is also the body of a white-haired girl, who is clutching this very stone slab with all her might. Alan asks a fat guy named Hans to take this stove and be extremely careful because anything can happen. He asks everyone else to take a fighting stance because he senses the presence of other opponents who should soon be nearby. He decides to directly ask those who all this time, from the depths of the shadow, to appear in the light as they moved along the floors of the ruins. Behind him are immediately several mysterious cloak silhouettes emerging from the shadows, which he calls Calamity, which he believes are a bunch of rats. Silhouettes in cloaks say that the researchers have betrayed the true god and will be punished for such a rude act. The organization that hides in the dark also claims to be traitors, the rats must be hiding in the sewers. After these words, they immediately enter into battle and Alan orders you to protect Hans and the stone slab at all costs. Meanwhile, Michael and Anna finally go down the long stairs to the 3rd floor of the ruins, and the girl says that she is very tired. Once in front of the entrance to the 3rd floor, they both feel a strange aura on the other side of the door. Suddenly, the main character grabs his chest with his hand, experiencing a strange sensation that slightly worries the little girl, who begins to worry about him. Michael understands that this is the reaction of the tree of evolution, and apparently it very much craves what is right in front of them. He assumes that right at the entrance to the 3rd floor there is a plant of a higher class than the Tyrant King flower that he encountered before. Upon entering the hall, he notices a plant-type energy core and assumes that he can absorb it very quickly and safely without engaging in battle with it. Once I get the energy core of the evolution tree, it can evolve again, which will allow me to increase my strength. Then I can rush to the 3rd floor and fight with those people for the treasure of the ruins. Using the main character's shadow skills, the hero tries to get to the core undetected, but something goes wrong and it detects the main character, starting to move higher and higher. As we rise higher and higher to the ceiling of the hall, our heroes discover a huge, colossal knight made of stone, with which the plant core begins to merge into one whole. The plant digs into the stone knight's helmet, and its vines take control of his entire torso. Michael understands that nothing happens as simply as he expected, asks Anya to once again hide in his shadow and give him the opportunity to figure everything out on his own. The girl tries to shout that she doesn't see anything, and the main character, using his abilities, takes her to the other end of the hall. He understands that the evolution tree may appear to reabsorb the energy core, and he cannot allow Anya to find out its secrets, so it would be better to hide her. This energy core uses vines to control the statue. I just need to remove it and victory will be inevitable. I'm trying to use my physical skills. Michael tries to make a direct attack on the stone knight's body, but his strength is different from all the others and this attack does not bring the desired results. Realizing that weapons are powerless in this situation, he continues to dodge the attacks of the giant stone statue and decides to limit its mobility, and then try to destroy the core. I'm trying to come up with a plan on how to do this. Moving along the edge of the arena, he comes across long branches of a vine growing along the entire wall. Grabbing one of them with the help of his shadow skills, he wraps it around the stone knight's body, trying to build a kind of trap. Let's see how long you can hold out against my level 8 power. Michael pulls with all his might on the makeshift rope, which allows him to bring the stone knight to the ground and knock him down. The speed of movement and immobility of the statue is not enough to quickly and lightningly get to its feet, and during this time the main character provides the opportunity for the evolution tree to finish this battle. At the same moment, Michael is surprised that the tree, unlike the previous time, decided to go outside on its own to beat the energy core. It releases its roots and digs into the eye of a defenseless plant, beginning to suck all the juices out of it. After absorbing the core of the tree of evolution, it begins to shine and change, and in front of our protagonist appears a tall, slender girl, who has been the tree of evolution all this time. At the same second, a contextual window appears in front of him, which informs him about the opportunity to evolve and increase his rank, for which he must have a certain set of skills that the main character already possesses. I accept the tree's offer. Michael feels his body begin to fill with energy, and all his characteristics begin to noticeably increase. Once promoted, all of his skills also increase in level, and the tree informs him of the required intelligence and detection power levels to advance to the next rank. Thanks to the tree with a brush goal, the upgrade is much faster and more convenient. Remembering the past, in order to increase the level, I ran like crazy, killing a cloud of monsters. Looking at the girl, the protagonist decides to clarify whether he should still call her the Tree of Evolution, to which he agrees. Michael also asks why the evolution tree chose him as a victim for revival, to which he receives the answer that she cannot answer his question right now, and she does not have memory of all the events. My evolution is the key to unraveling my past life. It is not surprising that you helped me during the attack of the horde of the infected and allowed me to continue to develop. My memory seems to be tied to your evolution, so your growth is very important for both you and me, and the discovery of more information. After these words, the evolution tree disappears again, going into the system, and Anya appears behind the main character, who rejoices at his victory. The girl turns out to be slightly amazed because she does not understand at what moment the victory in the battle occurred, but nevertheless she is very happy for her brother. The rejoicing at the victory of our heroes is interrupted by an unexpected earthquake, after which the ground under their feet begins to crack, and tongues of flame begin to emerge from its cracks. After a few seconds, the floor literally explodes, and silhouettes in cloaks jump out of the ground, as well as Alan leading the battle with them. He notices our main character, and they look at each other for a short time, trying to understand the situation and understand whether they are enemies. Still, having decided to land next to our heroes, he is surprised that besides them, there are still people in the dungeon, and, apparently, they have not fully explored all the floors of the dungeon. I notice silhouettes in cloaks. Michael remembers what Anya was talking about, and decides to clarify whether she has seen these people before, to which the girl replies that she has not seen Alan and his friends. Their conversation is interrupted by mysterious silhouettes in cloaks, who order them to immediately give them the broken arm of the divine stone, and he says that under no circumstances is he going to give them the found artifact, even taking into account the fact that 2 of his squad have already been seriously injured. Watching their conversation, Michael realizes that apparently they were fighting for the treasure found on the 5th floor of the ruins. Having learned the name of our protagonist, Alan asks for forgiveness for dragging him into this story, but really hopes that he can help him deal with these enemies. VJ tries to dissuade his friend by pointing out that the stranger is only at E rank and there is no point in asking him for help. At this time, the silhouettes in cloaks who are D rank begin to laugh, saying that no matter how many scum you recruit into your team, you will all die. Alone says that they are at a disadvantage, and he feels that the main character is not an ordinary person, so he boldly offers to join the battle. VJ continues to insist that a person with such a low level of strength will not help them in battle in any way, and besides, there is a little girl with him who will act as ballast. Silhouettes in cloaks talk, calling weak people nonentities who try to flock together and do everything possible to survive. The main character is trying to understand what is happening because the silhouettes in cloaks very much resemble monsters, and if you look closely at them, their bodies have a very familiar aura. He remembers his battle with an advanced infected girl who was guarding a fragment of a meteorite and had her own consciousness. Immediately after this, he asks the blonde guy and Alan to stay here to protect Anya while he himself completely figures it out. Alan tries to stop the main character, but he, with incredible determination, immediately rushes into the attack, realizing that these are unusual opponents and a battle with them will be much more dangerous. Starting the battle, he immediately tries to realize if there is a main individual among these monsters in order to first deal with the minions. Suddenly, one of the silhouettes tries to attack the main character from behind, but a charge of fiery energy flies into his face, which saves Michael from being hit in the back. This stream of fire turns out to be released by Alan, who asks him not to act rashly because he will be the main attacker who must be supported. Looking at him, Michael realizes that this person is a D rank awakened with a very strong flame ability. At this time, the silhouettes in cloaks begin to talk over the main character, not understanding how a low-level person can be so fast and that they sense divine power in him. And he asks Michael to be careful because these creatures are difficult to deal with, and such damage is just a speck of dust for them. After these words, the main character in an instant gets closer to one of the monsters and with a powerful blow of his blade literally cuts his body into 2 parts. VJ is incredibly amazed at such speed and strength, and little Anya says that her brother is very strong and will not lose easily. Alan also confirms his words, realizing that his assumptions turned out to be correct and the main character is really not that simple, perhaps even too simple. Stand over the main character's defeated enemy informs the context window that 600 evolution points are received for defeating a D-rank monster. The second silhouette in a cloak looking at the protagonist, he does not understand what is happening, because a low-level little man cannot have a divine aura and be so strong. Michael says that, according to him, one can conclude that the Tivani also call themselves divine, in which case he must be a deicide. At the same moment, the monster in the cloak begins to scream, saying that this simply cannot be and he is not going to be the loser in this battle. Screaming that all the little people will be destroyed, he begins to pierce himself with needles sticking out from behind his back and begins to transform. Michael says that he has already encountered this type of enemy and, apparently, he begins the transformation in order to fight with all his might, and asks everyone to run away from here as quickly as possible. Vijay immediately grabs little Anya in his arms and says that this is complete madness, and ordinary people definitely cannot cope with this. And he says that he's not going to just run away because this monster wounded his comrades, and he can't just leave. Looking at the monster, they realize that it has completed its transformation and is now somewhere in the C-rank level of power. He immediately begins to attack our heroes with a spear covered with vines, which after the blow rush after Michael and Alan. Reflecting attacks with a vine, Alan tries to understand who Michael really is, because, having only an E-rank level, he is able to withstand monsters much stronger than him in strength. At the same time, he charges a huge fireball in his hand in order to assess how powerful the enemy is in front of him. I try to attack the monster standing in front of him. He realizes that his attack does not even leave scratches on his body, and this is very sad. Taking advantage of a second of confusion, Michael at this moment finds himself behind his opponent's back, trying to attack him with his daggers. The monster manages to react to this by defending himself from the attack, and they say that such a pathetic non-entity will never be able to defeat him. The protagonist realizes that this native type of monster is much stronger than the one he encountered before, and it seems that they continue to evolve at a breakneck speed. He also realizes that he himself is not the same person he was a few days ago because, like other survivors, he is evolving. But still he needs to restrain himself since there are strangers nearby. Michael fights the monster using only a shadow gap and his own physical skills. But even this is enough for Alan and Vijay to be amazed at its colossal strength. Alan asks his friend not to ask how this is possible, because for the first time he sees that an E-rank fighter can suppress and fight on equal terms with a C-rank monster. At the same time, the main character continues to push his opponent with a powerful blow, sending him towards the nearest wall. Retreating to Alan, he says that he is amazed at his strength if he is able to fight alone with such a terrifying enemy. Michael says that his defense is too high and his current weapon will not be able to deal fatal damage to him, while in his head he understands that he can use the ability to devour, which will instantly kill him. But he needs to check something. Now he has a plan to deal with it, but he needs Alan to give him some time to prepare. His new friend gives his consent, and Michael understands that this is being done in order to test the fighting abilities of his new acquaintance and his strength. After his request, Alan engages in battle with the monster using his strength to the maximum, causing a huge column of fire tornado. The infected, breaking through a wave of fire, tries to shout insulting phrases towards people, but Alan shuts his mouth with a fire bomb. Even if I can't defeat you here and now, I can at least make you shut up for a while. The main character understands that fire abilities are very strong, and it is not surprising that the guy was able to reach D rank in such a short time. Judging by the destructive explosive power and large attack area, he assumes that this ability will be very effective for him in the future. He hopes that in the future he will be able to find an opportunity to conclude a contract with him for the ability. But for now he returns to the body of the defeated Stone Knight to take his spear. At this time, Alan is trying his best to distract the monster, dodging its attacks while simultaneously trying to inflict at least some damage on it. All this running around begins to drive the infected into an unprecedented rage and drive him crazy, which is why he wants to end the battle as quickly as possible. He uses his needles to catch up with the fleeing guy and finish him off here and now, but Michael arrives in time and prevents him from doing this. Throwing the stone spear lying on the ground with all his might, he throws the mutant away, saving Alan's life. The guy can't believe what he just saw, because an ordinary person cannot have such strength to lift a giant stone spear and throw it such a distance. Unfortunately, the force of the throw turns out to be insufficient, and the monster manages to catch him in flight and survive. At the same second, Michael, who arrived in time, begins to try to put pressure from the opposite end of the stone spear, trying to not give the monster the opportunity to come to his senses and counterattack. Alan also immediately comes to his aid and begins to help, creating efforts to defeat their common enemy. The infected tries to suppress their morale by saying that a pathetic little man who knows only one attack will not be able to do anything to him. Alan declares that in order to deal with such a non-entity like him, he only needs to know one attack, and he begins to concentrate a huge cloud of flame in his hand. He asks Michael to stand still and not lose ground, after which he releases a huge pillar of flame, which, performing a reactive function, pushes the spear towards the monster. Trying to resist this effort, the infected catches himself thinking that his consciousness is beginning to change, and as if someone is trying to take control of him. He stops for a moment, stuck in his own thoughts, saying that Anya is the sweetest and most beautiful girl in the universe. This second is enough for our heroes to squeeze out the last of their strength, and send the mutant flying on a spear towards the nearest wall. Looking at little Anya, they realize that she struggled to control this monster for even 1 second and had to spend all her strength on it. Fortunately, these efforts are enough for our heroes to win and cope with such a formidable enemy. Just worth a crushing victory. Michael helps Alan get to his feet while grabbing his hand and activating his ability, forming a contract for the ability of fire. Immediately after this, Michael asks to tell his new acquaintance everything he knows. I'm telling you that these people in black cloaks belong to an organization called Disaster. They are extremely mysterious. Their location cannot be determined by conventional human methods. Catastrophe. What kind of organization is this and what is their goal? The main character asks, while remembering that in past lives he had never heard of such an organization. All that is clear to me is that they are constantly catching the infected, but I can't tell myself more. The main character understands that his words almost exactly coincide with Anya's testimony, and also decides to clarify how they were able to find these ruins. And he says that they are mercenaries and came here as part of a mission, and as for the recruit, they themselves do not know. This is the broken arm of the divine stone loot that we obtained on the 5th floor. You have dealt with the disaster, and this thing should belong to you. There is no need for this. You can keep it for yourself because without it you will not be able to complete the mission. Michael realizes that he has already gained enough and was able to sign a contract for the fire ability. But he has one request. He shows Alan and everyone present a photograph of his younger sister, and asks if they know any information. And he replies that at the moment he doesn't know anything, but he will try at all costs to help in her search. At this moment, their wounded friend begins to cough up blood, and the girl tries to hurry up her commander, saying that they need to find a doctor as soon as possible. Alan asks for forgiveness and says that they need to go, giving the main character an address where he can contact him when he is in another city. Leaving the ruins, Vijay asks the commander of reality they will just leave because they outnumber him, and they could try to take away from him all the treasures that he managed to find on other floors. And he says that even if they are at the peak of their strength, altogether they will not be able to cope even close to him, because in that battle he used only half of his strength. He really amazed me, but what you say seems too exaggerated to me because he is just an E rank. Perhaps you are right, but when I was next to him I felt a discrepancy between his manifested strength and his personality. But even despite this, he creates a feeling of reliability and the fact that next to him you will be protected. When Anya asks why they didn't take those treasures, Michael says that he likes Alan and will give him a chance to prove himself in the future, so this will be a gesture of goodwill. Alan, if this stranger is really so good, why didn't you invite him to Skynet and even reveal our true identity? Because if he joins us, we will be able to complete a higher rank mission and receive a greater reward. Now is not the time and we cannot reveal all our secrets to random people, because if anyone from the top management finds out, we will be in trouble. Besides, he is also a very cautious person. After the group of researchers leaves, Michael invites Anya to also go on the journey. We must continue to explore this area and use the crystal to make you stronger because it will be very useful. The girls begin to be very flattered by these words, and as a result, her pride begins to strive very high, as does the feeling of her own importance. The main character suggests going to the 4th floor and clearing it, in particular so that Anya can gain experience and become stronger. On the 4th floor there is a huge number of mid-rank puppets that he met at the entrance to the 3rd floor. Michael decides to test and try out his new fire abilities, which he acquired from contact with Alan. I rush to attack the other knights. He easily dodges their slow attacks by rising into the air. The main character remembers that fire can be used as an accelerating force, and thanks to this he manages to move through the air for a short time, increasing his mobility. From now on, he will be able to fight in the air in addition to the group damage, which has increased significantly with the use of fire power. I want to finish them off in one movement, so I need to concentrate as much fiery energy as possible at one point and throw it out. Having finished accumulating strength, Michael launches a huge stream of flame at the knights, burning everything in its path. After such a powerful attack, only melted armor remains from the knights, and the main character realizes that this ability is purely destructive, after which he asks Anya to collect all the crystals. Starting the collection, the girl asks her brother to forgive her because the red crystal that Michael gave her for safekeeping has disappeared somewhere. The protagonist assumes that Anya could absorb him and asks to take another red crystal and split it as he did with the intelligence crystal. The girl holds one of the red crystals left behind by the knights, and you are surprised that it can also be absorbed. With a little effort, it also crumbles into particles, which causes the girl an incorruptible shock. Michael understands that Anya does not kill zombies, but captures them, so she cannot receive energy to level up, but in return, she can directly absorb energy from objects to evolve. He invites the girl to absorb all these crystals so that she can become stronger and improve her fighting skills. Having collected all the available crystals on the battlefield, the girl begins to emit a huge amount of energy, and her body begins to evolve. Having completed the evolution, Michael congratulates little Anya that she has now reached the status of an E-rank warrior. Next, our heroes set off to clear the corridors of the dungeons and ultimately find themselves on the 5th floor in the very hall where the researchers visited. They see a crystal coffin in front of them and assume that inside it there must have been the treasures of this floor, which Alan and his friends had already managed to take. The little girl suggests that apparently the protector of these treasures was in the coffin, and it seems that the atmosphere around is becoming piercing. At that same second, primitive horror hangs on little Anya's face, and behind them is an angry monster trying to attack them in the back. With a straight face, Michael sends the monsters flying with incredible force with a slight movement of his hand. He suggests that Alan and his friends had to fight the disaster after taking the treasure, and did not have time to clear the dungeon of monsters. Little Anya says that she is unable to take control of this individual, after which the main character himself decides to take up the matter. Trying to get close to the enemy, the monster activates the ability of lightning, covering its entire body, which forces Michael to retreat briefly. Deciding to safely end the battle, he uses his shadow skills to capture the monster and absorb all his powers. Using the absorption skill, he receives a certain amount of evolution points, as well as 2% of the lightning ability fragment. After defeating the floor's defender, the round stone slab in front of our heroes begins to rotate. Immediately after this, little Anya draws the main character's attention to a strange depression in the center of the slab, which very much resembles the shape of the token they found. Having inserted the token into the desired recess, it immediately begins to glow, depicting the silhouette of 2 triangles that activate the hologram of the dungeon, reflected vertically. After which, immediately behind the round stone slab, a passage opens, leading to the deeper floors of the dungeon. Moving down the stairs and exploring the ruins, little Anya asks Michael if she can fight, to which she receives the answer that when they encounter stronger zombies, they can fight together. If you meet a suitable one, let her fight him, and I will stand on defense so that I can later realize my abilities. Moving along the corridors, they come across monsters wearing the armor of a berserker. The armored doll has become warriors, and it looks like there is a very large gap between the upper and lower floors. The warrior in armor immediately rushes to attack the main character, but he dodges to the side without any problems. He throws one of his blades towards the monster in order to distract its attention, after which he instantly gets close to him and activates the devouring ability, receiving 400 evolution points and also 2% of the berserk ability fragment. Immediately after this, Anya screams that further down the corridor a huge number of warrior monsters, also wearing armor, are approaching them. The main character asks the girl not to disturb him and to give him the opportunity to deal with them. After a long period of time, the battle ends, and Michael realizes that using several abilities at the same time wastes a large amount of his energy. They were also finally able to get to the next floor in preparation for the battle with the next boss. Having opened the doors, a flock of angry birds immediately rushes at our heroes, which, apparently, are the defenders of this hall. Michael realizes that these are mutated owls and tells Anya that the plan has changed, and due to the fact that there are too many of them, he will immediately send her to the Shadow Gap. The girl expresses her dissatisfaction, saying that she does not want to constantly hide behind his back, and if she has now evolved, she will be able to stand up for herself. While dodging one of the bird's attacks, the girl tries to use her control skills and manipulate a few words. Having taken control of one of them, she manages to cause a small commotion in the enemy's ranks and also begin to fight. Looking at everything that is happening, The main character understands that Anya has really increased her strength, and he should not worry so much about her. Unconsciously, he treated Anya as his own sister and tried to overprotect her and protect her from any danger. At this time, an eagle owl with bright red eyes dives from the sky and attacks the little girl. She still manages to dodge the attack as at this time the fiery feathers of another bird fly at her. A dispute begins between the two owls about who attacked the girl first and who should get her. Michael invites Anya to take control of Owl. They say that he is very strong and apparently is the leader of this small group. The girl says that she is not going to do this because she does not like him, and she will not make him her companion. She also looks at the little white owl, which she seems to be emitting S-rank ability energy, and his overall combat power is the strongest among everyone in this building, but he can't use it yet. The girl says that she can help him awaken his powers if she manages to enter his consciousness, but for this she needs a little time. I'm trying to take control of the white eagle owl and barely manages to dodge the attack of two angry owls as she still manages to take control of him. Little Anya begins to laugh, declaring that she never doubted for a second that she would have enough time, and she would receive the greatest familiar of all time. At this time, all the other owls in the room look at the little familiar and call him a traitor. Little Anya gives her new pet a name, calling him Birgu and giving him confidence and victory. He immediately rushes to the attack using his S-rank ability called Absolute Wind Tornado, which allows him to quickly deal with opponents. Anya hugs little Birgu with all her might, marveling at his strength and saying that from now on they will become best friends. Michael congratulates the little girl, but asks her not to lose concentration because now they don't have time to relax. Watching the behavior of a flock of eagle owls, he assumes that the main owl, which is the boss of the floor, should soon appear. His assumptions turn out to be correct. After a few seconds, a magical beast with the ability to increase its size appears in the center of the arena. Overflowing with energy, Anya asks the main character to let her deal with such a formidable opponent herself, because this will be the first fight for baby Birgu. Michael gives his consent and the little girl is told that he will be on hand and will give her the opportunity to concentrate on the goal. The little familiar doesn't really like this whole idea, but Anya takes control of him, and he realizes that he again ceases to have power over his body. Immediately after this, the giant owl tries to attack little Birgu, but he avoids the attack without much trouble due to his size. At this time, Michael protects the little owl from the attack of other owls using his shadow ability. He asks Anya not to rush and do everything measuredly, because she must trust her companion, and not just control him. Anya understands that when she first entered the consciousness of little Birgu, she felt that he was cowardly and unsure of himself, and she thought that if he was forced to fight, he would regain his confidence. Since childhood, he was treated as a member of another species and was often bullied and treated poorly. Gradually, he began to be afraid of those around him and stopped trusting others, and Anya understood this very well because she was the one who also had no parents and was constantly bullied. The girl says that at one point she managed to meet her older brother Michael and he treated her with all kindness, so she wants to do the same for Birgu. Such a motivational speech immediately gives the little familiar an unprecedented boost of vivacity, which allows him to begin to fight with greater strength. Taking advantage of its speed, as well as the clumsiness and colossal size of its opponent, the little eagle owl manages to inflict many fast and lightning-fast attacks. And Michael realizes that this is the little owl that Anya chose. Although it does not seem so strong, it can still be useful. At this time, the battle with the boss of the floor drags on, and he continues to increase in size, slowly starting to destroy the entire floor of the dungeon. The main character realizes that the situation is becoming more serious and asks Anya to let him finish the battle. At this time, baby Birgu continues to dodge the hail of pointed feathers flying at him. I understand that I can't delay this. The girl activates the ability of her familiar tornado of absolute wind. At the same second, a huge energy tornado appears around the boss, sucking in a huge amount of debris and stones, which begin to cause a lot of damage to the boss's body. This is the S-rank ability of Absolute Wind Tornado, and in my past life it is the peak combat ability. Michael is surprised that they turned out to be right, and this little owl is really the strongest here and managed to take control of it. After this, the dungeon boss simply falls to the ground, and they rejoice at their first and grandiose victory. The girl runs to hug her new familiar, incredibly happy. Michael also turns out to be very happy for his companion and invites her to give Bug the opportunity to absorb the energy source. The familiar goes to absorb the boss's body, and the main character asks the girl how she was able to appreciate his potential. Anya says that when they use mind control, they can see the abilities of monsters and determine the strongest one, and then control them. The protagonist is surprised, albeit briefly, that a warrior like Anya has an ability that can directly influence the most powerful enemy unit and turn it into an ally. Big brother, don't you have an ability that allows you to copy others? Michael says that he really has such an ability. But what is the use of this information? And Anya offers to take and copy her power. The girl says that after everything that happened, she trusts the main character very much and wants to let him also get her ability to become even stronger. Michael realizes that he must have enough points to develop another ability, and also tries to conclude a contract with the little girl. The evolution tree cancels this request, informing that concluding a contract with the monster is simply impossible. Anya asks if everything went well and whether from now on Michael can control opponents, to which they receive a negative answer. At this point, Buga finishes absorbing the boss's energy and evolves to rank. Little Anya hurries to her familiar to congratulate him on the new level of evolution, which is why it was not possible to conclude a contract with Anya. He remembers that the girl is not a person, and is also a monster resulting from the apocalypse, but during the time spent with her, he has already begun to forget about this. He promises himself that this time he will not allow society to do to her what happened in his past life, and invites her to move on. I make my way deeper into the dungeon. Our heroes are considering further plans for the battle, because their strength has already been pretty much exhausted. Even if Anya didn't show it, this little girl has gone through so much with me and is most likely holding on with all her strength. Michael activates the Shadow Gap ability in order to get the maximum benefit from this place to increase his level. Analyzing this evolution tree about the required levels of intelligence, agility, power to level up, he realizes that he needs about 150,000 evolution points, and at the moment he only has 40,000. At this time, somewhere within the walls of the shelter, a small commotion begins to reign due to an unexpected guest. Some stranger is trying to get into a fight with every survivor in the shelter, trying to find a worthy opponent, and also wanting to see the god of war. Megan notices panic within the walls of the shelter. Not understanding what is happening, she receives information from one survivor that people from another shelter have appeared and want to fight us to determine strength. Meanwhile, on the third mirror floor of the ancient ruins, Michael and Anya feel a strange, mysterious energy. The main character invites the girl to move forward because soon they will meet their last enemy. After passing the third and fourth floor, I received 90,000 evolution points. The fifth floor gave me 20,000 as a safety net. It would be better to improve my combat abilities first. Michael spends almost all the points he has collected to upgrade his skills, after which the evolution tree informs him about the transition of the strength skill to a higher level of power. The only skill that remained at a lower level after the distribution of points was intelligence, to raise which the main character needs to accumulate a few more points. After the distribution of skills, the increase is so great that it causes a severe attack in the body. Little Anya decides to check if everything is okay with the main character because she is very worried about him. Michael says that everything is fine with him and offers to enter the main hall by opening the gate and fight the boss. This time he asks the little girl to wait for him outside because he is very worried that she is exhausted and simply does not have enough strength. Michael doesn't care what kind of enemy will be behind the walls because he wants to test his new power. Opening the door, he discovers a huge armored python with the ability to poison anything it damages. Having dodged his first attack, the main hero soars into the air and concentrates 30% of his strength in his hand to test the snake's strength. Even 30% is indicated to be enough to slam the snake's head into the stone floor with incredible force. The enraged monster clearly does not like this situation, but the main character is glad that he will be able to play the test of strength a little more. The monster decides not to stand on ceremony, accumulates a huge amount of poison in its mouth, and splashes it towards the main character. Using the shadow skill to evade the attack, Michael once again goes behind the snake and this time decides to put 50% of his maximum into the blow. This blow turns out to be so strong that the snake begins to completely bleed, and the protagonist understands that 50% of his strength is the limit that the enemy can withstand. Realizing that defeat is inevitable, the snake tries to carry out its last attack by investing the remnants of its life force into it. Michael activates the ability to devour and, unfortunately for his opponent, turns out to be the winner in this battle. At this time, Manhwa, waiting outside the doors of the boss's chambers, feels that there is no movement inside and hopes that her brother is doing well. She decides to ask little Birgu if they should go inside, to which Al replies that they are both intellectuals and cannot just open the stone door. A few moments later, the door opens and an unharmed Michael comes out, asking for forgiveness for the wait because everything ended much earlier than he expected. He also looks at the little girl and says that he has a gift for her, which makes her sparkle with all the colors of the rainbow. He hands Anya a small gold medallion, saying that it will suit her very well, she needs to try it. The girl says that this icon is very beautiful, but still she does not know how to test it, and Michael asks to simply activate it like energy crystals. Our heroes find themselves in a special cube, and Michael says that this medallion activates teleportation to a special space, which is very useful when taming various monsters. The main character says that this medallion has similarities with his shadow abilities, but unlike the medallion, it can move, and Anya will be able to leave the real world for her own safety. Okay, I suggest we leave these ruins because we have been traveling for a very long time, and I am very hungry, and it would be nice to find something to eat. Once on the surface, Michael says that he used to store all the food nearby in a nearby supermarket and suggests going there. Having reached the store, he invites Anya to go in search of food while he himself gets busy clearing the streets of zombies, which have changed a lot during his absence. Even after killing that python from the ruins, I still don't have enough points to increase detection to level 9, and need to get another 3,000. At this stage of development, the strength of our main character is at the 15th level, agility at the 13th, detection at the 8th, and intelligence at the 5th. He decides to continue clearing the areas until he can evolve to a new rank because he needs to become as strong as possible, and return the memory to the evolution tree. At this time, somewhere nearby in one of the back streets, a man, along with his wife and child, are making their way through the streets of the city trying to get themselves some food. The man does not understand why the world suddenly turned into present ruins in such a short period of time, but remembering the words of one young man, one must always look for resources for survival. At that same second, the foot of a huge monster appears above the car in which he was trying to find any supplies, about to crush him. His wife, standing nearby, is trying to warn her husband about the danger and the fact that in just a few seconds he will be dead. I think that he has already ended up in the next world. He is unexpectedly saved by our main character, who orders him to get out of here as soon as possible, otherwise next time he may not be around. After which an E-rank monster falls to the ground, for which Michael receives 400 evolution points as well as a fragment of the enlargement ability. The man, seeing death flashing before his eyes, thanks him and also hints that he has already seen him somewhere. He remembers that they saw each other on that fateful day before the start of the apocalypse, and he helped him deliver groceries from the store to his home. He also says that he took the guy's advice and managed to save his wife and daughter, but unfortunately now they have to look for resources to survive. They are interrupted by the emerging horde of the infected, and the main character asks them to retreat for a while and continue the conversation after he finishes the cleanup. Gradually destroying the monsters of the evolution tree reaches the limit, and informs him that he has reached the required number of points to move to D rank. At this very time, little Anya and Birgu ate their fill to such an extent that they simply could not move. Michael immediately enters the room along with a family of survivors, saying that he met them on the road while he was clearing the area of the infected. He tells the man that for now they can stay here and eat, and later he will take them to the shelter, for which he receives incredible gratitude. Anya says that she will take care of everything, and at this time the main character can also take a break and at least have a little snack. Having properly refreshed himself, going out onto the balcony, Michael finally decides to distribute evolution points and start moving to a new rank. He plunges deep into the system and finds himself in his consciousness in the middle of the Temple of Evolution. Having fulfilled all the conditions, its characteristics increase significantly, as do its abilities, which begin to work with greater power. The evolution tree congratulates him on his promotion to D rank, and Michael immediately decides to ask her how she came here. The tree says that so far all she knows is some scraps and fragments of memories from a past life and the time in which they are now different from the one before. The main character immediately tries to ask what exactly she means and what world she means, but his questions are immediately interrupted by his sister's voice, which is heard in the air. All this turns out to be just a figment of his imagination, and in fact it is the voice of Anya, who calls him on an urgent matter, and the tree invites Michael to discuss this next time. Returning to the real world, the girl hurries to inform the main character that Goldie has returned and is in a hurry to convey important information. At this time, a real mockery continues within the walls of the shelter, where that same man continues to demand that he bring the god of war because all the other survivors cannot give him a worthy fight. Such impudence begins to pretty infuriate all the survivors present in the shelter, including Austin, who decides to volunteer in gratitude for Michael saving him. Having risen to the ring, the man begins to laugh at another pathetic corpse who decided to volunteer. They begin to fight and Austin immediately decides to use his shadow rupture abilities, but the man's insight allows him to strike even infertile creatures. You are all fools here who rely only on your abilities, while your technique and physical strength are very lame. After these words, he throws Austin out of the arena, hoping that there are still brave souls ready to compete with him in strength. His speech is interrupted by Megan saying that there are still awakened ones that he has not fought with, and she will act as a candidate. The man is surprised that among the volunteers there is a girl who has no choice but to protect all these weaklings. Before the fight, Austin tries to warn the girl that her ability is intended for a single attack and his level is much higher than hers. Having climbed into the ring, the man invites the girl to negotiate, and if she agrees to have dinner with him, he will not beat her. At the same moment, Goldie manages to reach the gates of the shelter along with Michael, who rushes to the aid of the survivors. Right at the entrance he is met by Olivia, who has lost her glasses and is trying to stop the main character by demanding that he undergo a check. At this time, Megan finds herself completely broken and covered from head to toe with bruises. Well, listen, Victor would definitely like you, and if I ruin your beautiful face, he obviously won't like it. With the last of her strength, the girl tries to attack her opponent, which makes him surprised that she has not yet given up and is still trying to resist. I'm surprised at such determination. He says that since she wants to die so badly, he will allow her to do it. At that very second, a powerful blow from Michael's palm sends the impudent man into a deep knockout, face down into the ground. All the survivors in the shelter begin to rejoice at the arrival of the god of war, in particular Megan kneeling before him. Michael says that Goldie managed to inform him about the current situation, and he arrived as soon as he could to completely sort it out. One of the survivors asks the main character to be careful because people from another shelter want to absorb their ranks for their own purposes. At this moment, the man rises full of anger, not understanding who dared to touch him and promising to destroy the insolent person. Michael says that if he is talking to him, he should turn around and tell him straight into his eyes. You try to look around. The main character begins to mock him, not giving him the opportunity to even look at his face while continuing to beat his opponent. He begins to deliver a huge number of blows, saying that his opponent is so weak that he cannot even look him in the eyes. At this moment, in Commander Winston's office, a person is pressing him with all his might, demanding an immediate answer. Those who put pressure on him turn out to be the commander of another shelter named Rick, who demands that control and command be transferred to his hand. Winston says that he is very flattered by such an offer, but this shelter was protected thanks to one person, and he cannot simply transfer command authority without his consent. Commander, how can you be so stupid? If you want to do big things, don't worry. If you agree to my conditions and transfer your project on genetic medicine research, you will become one of the top leaders of our main base. At the same moment, their conversation is interrupted by an unexpected knock on the door, which ignores Rick's statement that there is an important meeting and entry is prohibited. Michael enters the office, dragging behind him in one hand the body of the man he defeated, wondering who had the audacity to commit such obscenity. He throws the body of the defeated enemy on the floor, asking the commander if this dog is his subordinate. Looking at Commander Winston, he says that it looks like this man is an outsider, and asks him to immediately leave the shelter and let him talk to the commander. Commander Rick is immediately surprised by such impudence, and asks who this impudent guy is, to which he receives the answer that this is the very god of war. In a fit of anger, he begins to shower Commander Winston with threats, saying that he will regret his action more than once. After which he writes to leave the office, as well as the shelter, slamming the door behind him and leaving our heroes alone. Winston is very pleased with Michael's arrival and asks him if he managed to find his sister, to which the main character says that this case is still in limbo, but he has other information. That mysterious girl from the video you showed me, I need a screenshot of her photo. The commander promises to look into this issue, and also offers to provide him with assistance, to which Michael says that he will leave immediately after receiving the photograph. He also promises to provide coordinates to the ruins in the center of the city where they can mine many minerals to improve their skills, which greatly inspires Commander Winston. After this, the commander invites the main character to go with him to receive another present, and they find themselves on the second floor of ancient ruins. Finding himself in front of the huge gate, Bruce reports that just the other day they solved the puzzle leading inside, and he can take all the necessary treasures from there. Michael nevertheless decides to go inside, realizing that he has no choice because he could not find a suitable weapon for himself, and maybe the contents of this treasury will help him with this. Once inside, he sees in front of him a huge pedestal with many lights and a bridge leading to them. Each pedestal opens up the possibility of choosing one of the sacred relics, and Michael ponders what exactly he should take. Suddenly, the evolution tree prompts the main character to select a challenge token that is directly in front of him. Listening to the advice of the main tree, the hero reads the instructions that the token can be used endlessly and compete in the challenge tower, becoming even stronger. Having carefully considered his choice, he nevertheless confirms that he brought this relic into his possession and immediately decides to try it out. At the same moment, he is teleported to another dimension where a giant testing tower is located in front of him. At that very second, a cute girl appears in front of him and says that she is the conductor of the testing tower. She also says that she will accompany the participant during the entire passage, and will also answer any questions regarding the tower. The test tower is a place where test subjects practice. Each level has a level. The higher the floor, the more difficult it is to go further, and in total there are 600 floors in the tower. Also, on every 150th floor, debuffs will be created that increase the difficulty, and the main character has half a month to complete the test, after which the token will simply disappear. Having heard all the information received, Michael decides that there is no time to waste, and he needs to start immediately, and the presenter is trying to stop him. Once on the first floor of the initial rank, our main character faces a small testing arena. The girl says that it is very thoughtless to just go forward because she was going to say that there are fixed decorations on each floor, and the entrance is just a teleportation gate. To get to the next stage you need to kill all the monsters on this floor, after which you can get to the next level. The girl tries to warn the main character that the tower is a very dangerous place, but notices how Michael disappears somewhere at that very second. And after a few seconds, shock hangs on her face because the context menu informs that the floor has been completed in 30 seconds and access to the second level is open. At this time, in front of the gate, Bruce expresses his dissatisfaction that our protagonist has been gone for 30 minutes, and he is very worried. After a few more minutes, the door opens and Michael reports that there are no dangers inside and they can go inside safely. Dr. Bruce, burning with curiosity, immediately rushes inside to study new technologies and relics. Winston is interested in what exactly the main character chose as a relic for himself, to which Michael says that the little thing he took will be very useful for him in his head, knowing full well that he cleared 150 floors of the test tower in 10 minutes. Commander Winston gives the main character a photograph of the mysterious woman that he asked him to take, after which the protagonist announces that he will leave the walls of the shelter as soon as he has prepared all the necessary resources. After finishing the conversation with Winston, he goes in search of Anya, who is found sleeping in her bed, and decides to give the girl the opportunity to rest and hit the road the next morning. The next day he will tell little Anya that she needs to get ready because they are going on a journey. Little Anya wonders if they will tell the others about their departure because they will obviously worry about them. Just as Michael is about to give an answer, they are interrupted by Megan, who is standing at the exit from the shelter and says that she knew that the main character was going to leave the shelter secretly without saying anything. The girl says that she is going to go with them, but the main character tries to dissuade her, saying that it is too dangerous. Again, you try to stop me with these excuses, but I can't improve if I stay here, and in the end there won't be anything left that I can protect. Little Anya asks her big brother to take Megan with her because last night she took very good care of her and doesn't want to leave her alone. Having thought everything over carefully, Michael still agrees to take Megan with him, hoping that she will not become a burden for them. When the girls ask where they will go next, he remembers the coordinates of the city of Shao, which Alan gave him, and where their path will be planned in the future.